Good evening, and tonight you wake in the Sabine hills above the new city of Rome, circa 753 BCE, where fresh-cut timber and Tiber clay scent the air. Hammers ring on half-made walls, and the odd new town across the valley somehow contains almost every sort of man except the sort who knows how to make a proper home. Welcome back, Shona in Edinburgh and Megan in Wellington, who commented on the last video and stayed until the end, and it is very good to have you here again. Tell me where you are and what time it is for you in the comments, just like Shona and Megan did, and if you would like to fall asleep here often, please like and subscribe. Have you ever looked at a nearby place that seems small and ordinary from far away, and still felt that it might complicate your whole life? So you settle quietly into the hillside. The air tastes of goat milk and crushed thyme, while down below the clank of hammers on Rome's raw stone walls rises through dusty roads and green Sabine terraces. By the time you clear the sleep from your eyes, your grandmother Fulvia is already stirring barley over the fire and counting the smoke from Rome as fresh proof that she has been right all along. You lie for a moment on your woven mat and listen to the house breathe around you. The thatch above your head gives off a warm, dry smell from yesterday's sun. The plastered wall holds the night's coolness a little longer. Somewhere near the back pen, a goat shifts and knocks a wooden rail. Little bells answer in soft, thin notes. Your blanket is rough wool and a little too heavy for the season. You push it down to your knees and feel the morning air on your shins. Fulvia keeps stirring the pot. She stirs with the steady force of a woman correcting history itself. You know that sound well. It means barley porridge first, and opinion second. The hearth sends up a thin blue thread of smoke. It slips through the roof hole as if it has done this job forever. Your home is not large. It is the right size for sleeping, eating, and hearing everyone else think. Baskets hang from pegs along one wall. A jar of dried beans sits beside a jar of salt. 2 cloaks wait on a bench with the patient look of things that know you will need them again by evening. Your tunic rests folded near your feet. The wool is plain and brown and soft only in the places that have been worn smooth by use. You pull it over your head and work your arms through. The cloth catches for a moment at one elbow, as it always does, and then falls into place. The belt goes next. You wrap it once and pull it snug until the cloth gathers lightly at your waist. Your hair is a different matter. It always behaves as if it belongs to a louder family. You smooth it with your fingers and twist it back. One strand escapes at once and settles against your cheek with great personal conviction. Fulvia glances over and clicks her tongue. She does not stop stirring. She says hair should either stay where it is put or admit defeat. You suspect this is also her view of kings, walls, and weather. You sit on the edge of the bench and slip on your sandals. Dust already powders the leather straps from yesterday. Outside, the village is well into morning. Nobody waits for you to begin the day. That is one comfort of hell life. The world keeps moving with or without any one person's grand arrival. You step through the doorway, and the light meets you at once. It is clear and gold and already warm on the stones. The roofs around you are thatched and low. Smoke rises from them in patient little streams. The path between the houses is packed earth. It holds the marks of sandals, hooves, and one very determined chicken. A child carries a small bucket with both hands. An older woman rinses a bowl at the water jar and watches the slope below as if it owes her an explanation. From the next yard comes the clean smell of split wood. From another comes onions frying in oil. Your village sits on the Sabine heights above the Tiber Valley. The land here folds into terraces with walls of pale stone and strips of green. Goats move along the edges with more confidence than seems reasonable. They step where you would pause and think about it first. Lower down, fig trees cast short, thick shadows. Beyond them lie grain fields turning from green toward gold. And beyond those fields, too near for anyone's full peace of mind, the new city of Rome sends up its morning smoke. You can see it every day now. That is the problem. At first the smoke is only a line against the pale sky. Then the light shifts and the whole thing appears. The Palatine Hill rises above the riverbank in a rough shape of timber, mud, and ambition. It still looks new because it is new. Fresh plaster clings to walls that were wood yesterday. Stones sit in stacks beside paths that want to be streets. Even from here, the place smells unfinished. The wind carries up wet clay from the Tiber and the sharp, sweet scent of cut beams. Then comes the sound. Hammers on stone, axes on wood, men calling to one another as if volume itself were a building tool. Rome is always in the middle of becoming. It has not yet learned how to be still. Fulvia comes out behind you with the pot spoon still in hand. She follows your gaze down the slope and sniffs. There, she says, though she has said it every morning for months. Trouble with smoke. She predicted disaster the very first time a thin black line rose from the valley. She has never once allowed anyone to forget it. Her tally of fulfilled warnings is not written anywhere. That would be too modest. Instead, she keeps the count by memory and voice. By her account, Rome has already proved her right before breakfast on no fewer than 27 separate days. Today she adds one more. The smoke is evidently smug. You take the bowl she presses into your hands. The porridge is thick and pale and steaming. A little goat milk has been stirred in. A pinch of salt sits at the top like a small practical blessing. You eat standing in the doorway. The wood spoon warms your fingers. The barley tastes plain and good. It fills the part of you that would otherwise ask for honey. Honey is for feast days and special kindness. This is neither. Beside you, Fulvia keeps up a running account of Rome's defects. She points with the spoon toward the valley. Too much noise, she says. Too much digging. Too much confidence from men with new walls and no mothers. That last point returns often. In her mind it explains nearly everything. The men in Rome have a strange beginning. Even you know this. And you have never set foot inside their walls. People come up from the valley with stories. Traders bring them. Herd boys repeat them. Pot sellers improve them on the road. They say Romulus throws open a refuge on the hill. He welcomes men who have nowhere else to go. Freed slaves arrive first, then exiles, then wanderers, then men who have worn out their welcome in 3 towns and call it bad luck. There are shepherds with strong backs and uncertain stories. There are debtors who speak very carefully around numbers. There are men who left old homes in a hurry. There are men who perhaps should have. All of them gather under Romulus and call it a city. This is what unsettles everyone. A village begins with cousins, marriages, and old jars that nobody throws away. Rome begins like a basket emptied in a hurry. You can almost admire the nerve of it. Romulus, people say, talks about the place as if he is presenting a fine plan to the sky. Excellent hill, good river, strong walls, plenty of room. The only missing piece is obvious even from your side of the valley. The user base, as some wag at the well puts it, lacks female users. Fulvia does not enjoy that joke. She thinks it lets Romulus off too lightly. She says a city full of men without wives is like a pantry full of smoke, busy, irritating, and no use when supper comes. You finish the porridge and scrape the bowl clean. She nods with approval at that part at least. Then she sends you to the well with 2 jars. Daily life remains stubbornly daily even in the shadow of future legend. The path to the communal well curves between houses and low walls. Dust rises around your sandals in soft, pale puffs. A dog sleeps beside a doorway with one eye open. Chickens scratch in the shaded edge of a compost heap. At the well, 3 women are already drawing water. The rope creaks over the beam in a slow old rhythm. The well stones are cool under your palm. Their top edge is worn smooth by years of hands and rope. One woman has brought her little boy. He leans too far over the rim until she catches his belt and pulls him back with practiced calm. Another woman balances her jar on her hip and looks down toward Rome. She does not even have to say the word. Nobody needs to. The valley says it for her. The talk here is never sharp. It is too early, and the jars are too heavy. Still, Rome enters the conversation like a burr in wool, small, clingy, and hard to ignore. One woman says the men there work quickly. Another says quick work is what happens when nobody stops to fold blankets properly. You lower your own jar and listen to the splash below. The rope pulls against your hand with a familiar, honest weight. When the jar comes up, it beads with cool drops. A little water runs over your wrist and down your forearm. That chill feels perfect in the warming air. You almost stop thinking about Rome for 3 whole breaths. Then Fulvia arrives at the well as if summoned by incomplete criticism. She does not carry a jar. She carries commentary. This is, in her view, the heavier burden. She reminds everyone that she warned them when Rome was only one rude fire in a ditch. Nobody disputes this because nobody has the stamina. One of the older women asks whether the city truly has no wives. Fulvia lifts her chin. No wives worth naming, she says. No mothers making broth. No grandmothers saving seeds in the rafters. No women hanging washed cloth in the sun. No babies crying at the wrong times. No girls laughing at the well. In short, no sign that the place understands tomorrow. Only walls, speeches, and blisters. You carry the filled jars home slowly. Water shifts inside with a deep moving sound. It means the day is real and made of useful things. At home, you pour one jar into the storage pot and leave the other near the hearth. Then you go out again with a basket. The grain terrace waits above the house. A line of weeds has to be pulled before noon heat settles in. You kneel between the rows and work with both hands. The earth is dry on top and cooler below. A lark trills somewhere over the field. In the next terrace, a man mends part of a stone wall. You pull one weed, then another. The task is simple and therefore good. From here you can still see Rome between two olive trees. It sits where your eye catches it without asking. The city has no softness yet. That is what strikes you most. Your village has rounded corners, patched roofs, bent tools, and elders who remember when every tree was shorter. Rome has edges. Its streets are still mostly tracks worn through churned dust. Its walls rise in sections that look surprised to find themselves touching. Some halls are only posts and beams with roofs laid fast across them. Others already wear fresh mud plaster that dries in pale patches. Stones wait everywhere. Large stones, small stones, stones that promise to become something official the moment enough men shout near them. The place smells like a workshop pretending to be a homeland. You cannot decide if that is clever or merely loud. The river at its foot winds broad and brown. Tiber clay clings to carts, ankles, and everything else that comes too close. Boys who herd near the river bring back stories of the Romans' feet. They say nobody in Rome owns a clean hem. This feels believable. Dust seems to be their civic costume. By midday, the sun lies hot on your shoulders. The weed pile grows and your basket begins to fill. Fulvia calls you in for bread and olives. You are grateful enough to answer before the second call. The bread is coarse and dark. You break it with both hands and dip it in oil with a little crushed herb. There are olives wrinkled from brine and a dish of soft cheese. A sliced onion waits with more confidence than popularity. You sit in the doorway where the shade falls just right. A breeze comes up from the valley carrying river damp and hammer noise. Even at dinner, Rome is still building. It would build in its sleep if it knew how. Fulvia chews slowly and watches the smoke. She says the men down there are like magpies gathering every shiny problem they can find. Your uncle, who is kinder than wise, says a new city must begin somehow. Fulvia grants this with a grunt. She says she does not mind that Rome begins. She minds how it begins. Twin brothers, she says, are a poor foundation for anything needing orderly records. She distrusts any founding story with too much wolf in it. You have heard the tale in pieces: 2 infants, a river, a she-wolf, a hill, the sort of story that grows in the telling. By now only Romulus gives orders. Remus lingers in the tale the way an extra sandal lingers by the door. Even in story form, the whole thing feels male in the exhausting way that needs plenty of space and little supervision. Fulvia notices this too. After bread comes work again. The afternoon keeps its own list. You help spread beans to dry on a woven mat. You turn them with your hand so the sun reaches all sides. A neighbor brings fleece to card and sits in the shade with you. The wool catches on the combs with a scratchy pulling sound. Bits of fluff float in the hot light. They stick to your arms and to the tip of your nose. From where you sit, the whole village is visible in pieces. A woman beating rugs, 2 girls chasing a hen, an old man repairing a strap. Near the well, someone laughs and then lowers her voice. Life goes on in small, useful circles. That is why Rome troubles people. It is not made of circles yet. It is made of straight new lines cut into old ground. It is made of men arriving without mothers and wanting instant ancestors. Toward late afternoon, a trader comes through from the river road. His mule looks wiser than he does. He has salt cakes, a few bronze pins, coarse woven cloth, and news. In villages like yours, news is a trade good. He says Rome grows every week. Another gang of newcomers has joined them. Some are freedmen from far towns. Some are shepherds from the hills. Some are hard to sort, which may be the common rule. Romulus, the trader says, takes them in and puts them to work. Dig here, lift that, stand guard there, call yourself Roman by evening. Fulvia asks whether the city has found itself any wives yet. The trader smiles the smile of a man who knows danger and walks toward it anyway. Romulus is looking for alliances. That word makes several women stop what they are doing. Nobody likes the way it sits in the air. An alliance sounds tidy. Men often use tidy words for untidy wants. The trader shrugs and adds that Romulus speaks well. He makes every difficulty sound like a bold civic idea. This earns him a look from Fulvia that would curdle fresh milk. She says speaking well is not the same as thinking well. The trader laughs and says Rome's founding pitch would impress a gullible goat. Strong hill, good fields, river access, defensible walls. One critical gap remains, he says, and then stops before Fulvia can hit him with a beam basket. This is wise. Even you smile a little. Rome may be troublesome, but it is also absurd. A whole city of men cannot stay merely a collection of workers and speeches. At some point, even a new wall notices the missing half of the world. As the trader moves on, the village settles around that thought. Nobody says it plainly for a while. You card wool and feel the teeth of the comb drag through the fleece. The motion is calming and repetitive. The smell of lanolin clings to your fingers. Dust settles in the crook of your elbow. At the far edge of the terraces, boys bring the goats in from rough grass. Their bells make a soft, bright music. The sound comes first, then the animals themselves, stepping along narrow paths with complete faith in their own feet. You always envy that. One goat stops to chew a vine that does not belong to it. Another stares at Rome as if considering a poor investment. By sunset, the whole valley changes color. The Sabine slopes go honey gold and then bronze. Rome does not soften much in that light, though it tries. New wood gleams. Fresh plaster blushes a little. Dust turns almost noble. Smoke rises from cooking fires all through the Palatine settlement. For a moment, the city looks less like a problem and more like suppers. That feeling lasts until the hammering begins again from one late worker who has not learned evening manners. Fulvia hears it and mutters, "Of course. Supper tonight is lentil stew with onion and a heel of yesterday's bread. A little herb has gone into the pot. It does its best. You eat from a clay bowl with the warmth against your palms. The lentils are soft and earthy. The stew carries bits of carrot and a stubborn leaf that nobody successfully removed. It tastes simple and completely sufficient. Your family talks around the meal rather than through it. Small remarks pass like cups. A neighbor's roof needs patching. The lower terrace wants weeding tomorrow. The black goat may be expecting kids by the next moon. Then, the talk drifts back to Rome because apparently even lentils cannot hold it off forever. Your uncle says a city needs families. Fulvia says this as if she discovered it herself in a dream sent by practical gods. She asks what Romulus thought would happen. Did he imagine walls would marry each other? Did he expect the river to produce daughters out of clay? Nobody answers. These are not questions. They are decorative scoldings. After supper, you carry scraps to the animals. Twilight rests blue in the yard. The goats crowd politely, which is to say not politely at all. Their breath is warm and grassy. You scratch one behind the horn and feel the rough curve under your fingers. The chicken from earlier has somehow become more certain of itself. From the ridge above the house, the last light still catches the valley. You walk up there with your cloak over one arm. The path is familiar even in dimness. Loose stones sit where they always sit. At the top, the whole country opens. Sabine pastures step down in green lines, then fade into the darker band of the river. Rome sits on the far side with its little pricks of fire. Each one marks a hearth, a cooking place, a man settling into evening. That is what makes the place uncanny. It is domestic without being settled. You can imagine men there chewing coarse bread, rubbing sore shoulders, talking big about tomorrow. You can imagine muddy sandals by doors. You can also imagine what is missing. No women's voices trade recipes over walls. No grandmothers scold smoke. No little girls fetch water in pairs. A city can live one season on pure determination. After that, it begins to need the slower things. It needs marriages, kin ties, babies, wash lines, lullabies, and someone to know where the spare cord is kept. Rome has not planned that far. Perhaps Romulus thinks he has. Men who stand on new walls often mistake height for foresight. From this distance, the place almost resembles a clever thought. Up close, you suspect, it smells like wet dog, hot clay, and ambition. There is another thing villagers notice. Rome is not full of old people. The men there are young or trying hard to seem younger. Their city has few stooped backs and almost no patient elders. It has strength, speed, and restlessness. It has plans before customs. This, Fulvia says, is how you burn your porridge. She climbs the ridge more slowly than you do, and comes to stand beside you. Her cloak is dark against the fading sky. For a while she says nothing. This is how you know she is serious. Then she points with her chin toward the valley fires. She says the place is too close. Not close enough to visit easily, not far enough to forget. You nod because this is exactly the trouble. If Rome were a rumor, it would be simple. But Rome is visible. Rome is audible. Rome sends its smoke into your own clean air. When wind turns, it carries the river smell of that place into your bedding. It is hard to keep a proper dislike at a respectful distance under those conditions. Below, someone in the village calls for a child to come inside. Another answers from a yard. Simple sounds settle you. A gate closes, a jar lid knocks against clay, a sheep coughs somewhere with old man dignity. Fulvia says Romulus has collected every homeless fellow with 2 hands and a complaint. She wonders what he plans to do next. You say perhaps he will build more walls. This seems the sort of answer such men enjoy. Fulvia snorts. She says walls are the easy part. Then she gives you a side glance sharp enough to trim reeds. She says a city without women is only a camp with better publicity. You laugh to spite yourself. She hears it and allows the corner of her mouth to shift. That is close enough to tenderness for tonight. From Fulvia one takes these drifts where one finds them. When darkness deepens, you go back down and bank the hearth. Ash folds over the red coals like gray wool. Inside, the house grows close and familiar. The stored day stays in the walls a little while. You rinse your bowl with a splash of water and rub it dry with cloth. The simple work makes a small, clean ending. Then you unfasten your belt and shake dust from your tunic hem. Fine grit falls to the floor in a faint line. It is strange how much earth a person carries without noticing. By day's end, the hills come home with you. You sit to comb out your hair. It catches at first, then smooths. The room is dim now, except for the little fire glow. Fulvia settles herself with a sigh that contains history, weather, and judgment in equal parts. She says one final thing before sleep takes the sharpness from the evening. Mark my words, she says. Rome will not stay merely annoying. You tell her she has already marked them several times. She says repetition is wasted only on the sensible. This is almost certainly aimed at Romulus. It may also include your uncle. With Fulvia, categories overlap. You lie back on your mat and pull the blanket up. The wool smells faintly of sun and smoke. Outside, the village gives itself to night one sound at a time, a last footstep, a gate chain, the hush after talk. Across the valley, Rome still glimmers. Its small fires look harmless from here. Yet even now you can feel the shape of that new place pressing against your peaceful hill life. It does not touch you, but it leans. That is enough to keep the mind awake a little longer. A neighbor's dog barks once and stops. You think of the men below with their new timber halls and fresh mud walls. You think of their rough hands and borrowed hopes. You think of freed slaves who finally belong somewhere. You think of wanderers who hear a promise and follow it. You think of exiles grateful for any gate that opens. That part at least is easy to understand. A hill that says yes to the unwanted has a kind of rough mercy in it. Even Fulvia, in a very secret part of herself, may know that. But mercy does not make a home by itself. It needs bowls, wives, babies, old songs, patient fields, and somebody to remember feast days. Rome has the hill. Rome has the walls. Rome has the noise. What Rome does not have is your village's easy braid of family, habit, and women moving through the day with jars, bread, wool, and memory. From the Sabine heights, that missing part shines brighter than any fire. And while you drift toward sleep with goat bells fading and the smell of clay still in the air, down on the Palatine, Romulus is almost certainly calling the gap in opportunity, which is exactly the sort of thought grandmother Fulvia has been expecting from the first smoke onward. You stand on the terrace wall with dust on your ankles and a basket against your hip. Below you, the new city by the Tiber smells of wet clay, cut timber, and men working too hard. The morning carries the clank of hammers up the valley in a steady little rhythm. It sounds less like destiny and more like somebody building a shed before the rain. You squint toward the pale smoke over Rome and shift your weight on the warm stone. Behind you, goats crop the grass between the olives and pull at every leaf they can reach. Your mother shakes out a wool cloth beside the doorway and calls for more water. Your younger cousin chases a chicken that has stolen a strip of leek from the yard. Nothing in the hill air suggests that diplomacy is on its way. Then you see the line of men on the road below. They come in pairs at first, and then in a longer file behind. Their cloaks are dusty at the hem and still hold the river smell from the lower ground. One carries a staff with fresh leaves tied near the top. Another carries a little box of wax tablets. You know at once they come from Rome. Nobody else down there walks with that same hopeful speed. The Romans climb the path with city confidence and country breathing. By the time they reach your settlement, they are warm, polite, and trying not to show it. Your uncle sets out low stools under the fig tree because that is what proper people do. Your aunt brings watered wine in a jug with a chipped rim and does not smile. You stand in the shade with the other women and pretend to sort onions. The Romans accept the cups with both hands and thank everyone with great care. They look around your yard as if they are already measuring where kinship might fit. A dog lies under the bench and opens one eye at them. A baby on your cousin's hip pats the bronze brooch on one envoy's shoulder strap. The envoy with the tablets clears his throat and gives the request. It is plain, direct, and somehow still wrapped in ceremonial words. Rome, he says, seeks marriage ties with her neighbors and lawful wives for her men. Rome, he says, wishes to become not just a camp, but a true city. You feel the women around you go still in the way grain goes still before rain. It is not a shocking idea in itself. Cities need wives, children, grandmothers, and someone to remember where the spoons belong. The strange part is how directly the Romans ask for daughters, like they are requesting roof beams. They do not begin with 3 seasons of gifts or a slow weaving of trust. They arrive with olive leaves and a civic shortage. Your uncle thanks them for their honesty because he is too well-bred not to. Then he asks the question everyone wants answered before any other question. Who exactly are these Roman husbands? The tablets man smiles as if he expects this and begins his careful list. There are farmers there, he says, and herdsmen, and craftsmen, and men of courage. There are men with land allotments and men ready to build stable homes. There are men eager for alliance, children, and the peace of shared blood. You notice that he does not say much about mothers, sisters, or aunts. He says almost nothing about family altars that have seen more than one winter. He says nothing at all about grandmothers, which is always a tactical error. Old grandmother Fulvia is not even in the yard yet, and still you can feel her approaching judgment. The other envoy tries a softer line and tells you Rome welcomes many kinds of people. He means it as a strength, and opens his hands to show generosity. He does not hear how the words land in a Sabine courtyard. Many kinds of people here means men with no kin watching them at supper. It means runaways who arrive before dawn and say very little about the place behind them. It means young men who prefer new names and fresh walls to old decks. No one says this first, because your people do not enjoy being rude before the first refill. Your aunt fills the cups again and passes a bowl of olives without comment. A bee circles the wine and settles on the rim of a cup. The dog under the bench sighs as if the meeting is already going badly. At last your uncle gives the answer in the same mild voice he uses for poor weather. He says your settlement honors Rome's ambition and wishes the new city well. He says daughters are not timber to be sent downhill with a written note. He says marriage comes after trust and years, not after walls and speeches. The Romans nod because this is exactly the answer they expect and still do not like. They have been hearing versions of it all week. You learn this because tired men become truthful around the second cup. They have already gone to the Latins on the lower roads and to the Canaanenses beyond. They have climbed many hills and stood in many courtyards under many figs. Everywhere people set out stools, pour wine, and say no with impeccable manners. One village sends them off with cheese wrapped in leaves and an apology. Another sends pears for the road and suggests they try again after several generations. The Romans keep their faces composed through all of it. It is the face of men who prepare for a feast and discover they have built only benches. You imagine Romulus below the hill, standing among half-finished walls and calling this a temporary setback. He probably calls it a demographic matter and strokes his chin over the city map. Rome has excellent location, strong defenses, and robust fields beside the river. It has one critical gap in the user base, and everyone can see it. Female users, Grandmother Fulvia would say, if she heard the phrase, she would say it as if spitting out a fishbone. The envoys speak again and make the offer sound even more reasonable. A wife in Rome, they say, will have status, lawful children, and a share in a rising city. She will help shape customs from the first day and stand near the hearth of history. That last part sounds impressive until you notice the dust on their sandals. History at this moment looks very like fresh mortar and men missing half their roof tiles. You wonder whether anyone in Rome has actually asked what a woman might want to shape first. A proper grain bin would be a start. A safer latch on a door would also do nicely. Your mother shifts the breadcloth on the table and asks the question like a needle. If these men are so ready for marriage, where are their kin to ask properly? Where are the old women who inspect a bride's weaving and comment on her jars? Where are the family lines with graves, cousins, and stories of stubborn knees? The Roman with the leaves answers that Rome is new and still gathering its houses. He says every old city begins as a new city. This is true enough, which makes it only slightly less annoying. Your mother thanks him for the truth and declines him anyway. One of the younger Roman men blushes during the whole exchange. He keeps staring at the olives as if they might explain diplomacy. His belt is polished too carefully, and his tunic has a careful mend at one shoulder. You almost feel sorry for him. Then he says Rome offers women a chance to join a glorious foundation. The feeling fades a little. It is difficult to hear glorious foundation when the city still sounds like a cart yard. The hammers below knock out a reply on the wind. Someone in Rome is fitting stone over stone while these men ask for brides. Someone else is probably stirring lentils in a common pot and calling it urban growth. The Romans do not threaten, which counts in their favor. They do not brag much either, except in the general Roman manner. They simply keep saying Rome must become complete, as if completeness can be negotiated before supper. By noon the sun sits bright on the terrace edges, and the wine jug grows warm. Your aunt brings out flatbread, soft cheese, and sliced cucumbers with mint. No one expects the envoys to leave hungry, even if they leave disappointed. This is how refusal works among decent neighbors. You feed a man and decline his proposal in the same calm afternoon. The Romans eat neatly and thank everyone twice. The leaves on their staff are already drooping in the heat. One of them asks whether the Sabines at least understand Rome's need. Your uncle says yes, and that is the trouble. Everyone understands the need. Nobody enjoys the proposed solution. A city of unmarried men is a problem. A city of unmarried men founded by outcasts is a larger and much less inviting problem. You hear the word outcasts only once in the yard. People choose gentler words and mean exactly the same thing. They say mixed men. They say unknown men. They say men without households behind them. You know the stories already, because everybody on the hills knows them. Romulus opens a place of refuge and fills it quickly. Men come from nearby farms, rough villages, broken households, and who knows where else. Some come with strong hands and no questions. Some come with questions and no wish to answer any in return. A few come with very polished speeches, which is suspicious in its own separate way. In the village, people tell these stories while shelling beans or trimming lamp wicks. Nobody speaks with horror. They speak with the weary interest usually reserved for a neighbor who buys too many geese. Yes, the man may mean well. No, you still do not lend him your best daughter. When the envoys leave your courtyard, you walk with them as far as the spring. The path is narrow there, and edged with thyme crushed under sandals. Cicadas sing in the grass like little rattles that never tire. One Roman thanks you for the water skin you carry, and asks whether all Sabine villages answer alike. You tell him not exactly. Some answer with sympathy, and some answer with laughter, and most answer with both. He winces, because that sounds very close to the truth. He says Rome is not a den of thieves, as if this rumor has become a daily chore. You say you never called it that. You only say nobody knows the mothers of these men. He has no answer ready for that. At the spring, the men wash their hands and wet the back of their necks. They leave muddy half-moons on the stones and straighten their cloaks again. Then they go down toward the next cluster of houses, still carrying civic hope like a heavy jar. You watch them from above until the road folds them into dust. By evening, their visit has already become village talk. You hear it at the oven, where women slap dough onto warm stones. You hear it at the goat pen while a boy tries to tie a gate with old cord. You hear it beside the cistern, where two girls argue over a dropped cup. Everyone repeats the Romans' words with slightly different faces. Some admire the directness, because at least it saves time. Some find the directness proof that the Romans do not yet understand how families work. A marriage request, people say, should arrive with kin and gifts and long memory. It should not arrive like a land survey. Your cousin Mara says Rome cannot stay a camp forever, and someone must marry there eventually. She kneads bread with fierce practical hands and dusts flour onto her forearms. She says a city by the river could grow rich very quickly. She says children born there would have markets near, fields near, and trade boats almost at hand. Your aunt says rich quickly is exactly how trouble introduces itself. The dough receives this opinion in 3 firm punches. Your uncle's sister says she pities the Roman men a little. She says it quietly while cutting dried figs into a bowl. A man cannot build a city on bachelors forever, she says. Sooner or later he needs wives, cradles, spinning baskets, and someone who remembers where the cumin jar sits. Several women nod at that, because it is perfectly sensible. Then they remember who is asking, and stop nodding. Cautious sympathy sits in the room like a guest nobody wants to offend. It drinks a little wine, and still does not get invited back. By the time the light goes gold on the hills, Grandmother Fulvia arrives. She comes uphill from her sister's house with her stick, her shawl, and her complete satisfaction. She smelled Roman smoke years ago, and has never let anyone forget it. Today she adds a fresh mark to her running tally with one bent finger. I count this as number 19, she says, though the exact method remains known only to her. You hand her a stool and pretend not to smile. She sits beside the oven and receives the whole story in useful detail. She listens without interrupting, which is how everyone knows the judgment will be thorough. The bread crackles at the edge of the coals. A pot of lentils thickens beside her foot and releases garlic into the dusk. At last she gives her verdict with the calm of weather settling over a valley. No decent hill family sends a daughter to a city still choosing its own fathers. She says Rome is full of men who arrive without grandmothers, and that alone should end the matter. She says a place founded by brothers with too much energy is not a household. It is a warning. Nobody argues with her, because nobody ever wins, and supper gets cold. She keeps going anyway, because Fulvia treats agreement as wasted opportunity. She says Romulus frames every questionable choice as bold civic innovation. She says if he loses a goat, he probably calls it a pastoral redistribution strategy. She says if he cannot find brides, he will soon rename the problem and feel much better. Even your uncle laughs into his cup at that. Grandmother Fulvia accepts the laugh as tribute and counts it among her proofs. After supper you sit outside with your spindle and watch the last light on Rome. The city looks almost peaceful from the hill. A thin ribbon of smoke rises straight into the evening, and the walls catch a soft red glow. You can almost believe the Roman pitch on evenings like this. Below the new wall, fields lie dark and waiting. Beyond them the Tiber moves slowly and reflects the first pale stars. A place can look steady before it feels steady. That is another of Fulvia's sayings, though she claims the hills said it first. The next market day brings more pieces of the same story. You go down with cheese, onions, and 2 lengths of woven man to trade. The lower path is dusty and smells of fennel where sandals brush the stems. At the market you hear Latin women recount the Roman visit in the same amused tone. Their envoys come with polished phrases, one says, and the phrases wear thin by noon. Another says the Romans ask for daughters the way men ask for borrowing rights at a stream. Civilly perhaps, but with too much confidence. A Canaanensian trader nearby snorts into his beard and agrees. He says the Romans spoke of alliance, shared future, and mutual prosperity. Then they forgot the small detail that trust does not grow overnight in river clay. He buys your cheese and wraps it in leaves while speaking. His fingers smell of sheep wool and pennyroyal. An old Latin man by the fig stall says Rome gathers every stray in the district. He says this without anger, and with almost admiring accuracy. If your donkey wanders, he says, it may soon own a lot near the Tiber. People laugh softly and keep choosing fruit. Nobody in the market seems frightened by Rome. They are wary in the same way one is wary of a very eager dog with muddy paws. The dog may mean affection. The dog may also knock over the oil jar. You return uphill with lentils, salt, and 3 more versions of the Roman request. By now the pattern is easy to see. Rome asks in the language of kinship, but everyone hears the clatter of urgency behind it. The city needs wives because it has built itself too quickly around men alone. Romulus, you hear, does not admit this as embarrassment. He presents it as planning. He speaks of the city's future and the wise joining of peoples. He speaks like a man unveiling a clever design on a wax tablet. Secure hill positions, good soil, strong walls, and one missing population segment. The whole thing sounds like a pitch deck for a granary that accidentally forgets grain. You try to picture the meeting in Rome where this becomes a policy. Perhaps Romulus stands with dust on his sandals and points at half-finished streets. Perhaps he hears hammers on stone and decides the next needed material is wives. Perhaps every Roman around him nods as if this is a normal order of thought. In fairness, you tell yourself, the problem is real. A city needs births, dowries, in-laws, and women who know how to organize a pantry before winter. It needs lullabies and quarrels over washing, and 100 daily habits that turn walls into homes. Men alone can raise a gate. They cannot by themselves produce cousins. This is as obvious to Sabines as rain clouds over the ridge. That is why the refusals are not cruel. They are simply practical. No father wants to send a daughter into a place where every household is still being invented. No mother wants her child to be the first woman teaching manners to 20 unrelated men. No grandmother wants to die wondering whether the family line now lives above a ditch with strangers. At home, the debate grows fuller over several evenings. You sit on a low stool and card wool while voices rise and settle around you. The room smells of lamp oil, warm grain, and the rosemary hanging from the beam. Mara still says someone will say yes eventually. She says Rome offers land and a chance to stand at the start of something large. She says there is power in entering a city early, before all the places are fixed. Your mother says there is also danger in arriving before the roof is on. She threads beans onto a string for drying and does not look up. Your uncle says alliance with Rome could be useful one day. He says roads matter, river trade matters, and new neighbors do not disappear because you frown at them. He speaks as a man who counts practical things. Grandmother Fulvia speaks as a woman who counts everything. Useful, she says, is not the same as suitable for your granddaughter's marriage bed. She taps her stick once on the floor and receives respectful silence. Then she begins listing what Rome lacks with affectionate thoroughness. It lacks known mothers, she says. It lacks old storage jars that outlast 3 generations. It lacks family feasts where the same cousin tells the same story every year and everyone pretends surprise. It lacks enough laundry lines to prove permanence. This last point somehow feels especially strong. A city without enough laundry is not ready for brides. You keep winding yarn around your palm and try not to laugh. Your little brother asks whether Romans do not wash. Fulvia says of course they wash. She says that is not the issue, and any fool can hear it. The men in the room suddenly find great interest in their cups. Later, when the children sleep and the lamps burn lower, the talk softens. Your aunt says the Romans must feel shame now, being refused at every door. She says it while scraping the pot and saving the last lentils for morning. Your mother says maybe shame will teach patience. Your uncle says maybe it will teach invention, and that answer sits badly with everyone. It is never ideal when a frustrated founder begins inventing. Across the valley, Rome keeps building anyway. The walls rise a little more each week. New roof beams go up with their pale wood still smelling of sap. Unpaved streets snake between huts and workyards, all dust by day and ruts after rain. From above, you can follow the city by sound, even when mist hides it. There is always some shouted measure, or dragged load, or donkey complaint. Ambition makes a very recognizable noise. Reputation moves more slowly. For all Rome's new stone and timber, The hill people still speak of it with a careful pause. It is the pause used for a man who may prosper and still should not hold your infant. A Latin woman at the spring says, Rome grows taller each month and no kinder in rumor. A Sabine shepherd says the city wall climbs faster than trust. Grandmother Fulvia hears this and claims she thought it first. No one contests the point because the phrase suits her too neatly. A week later, word comes that King Titus Tatius receives Roman envoys in full dignity. You do not attend, but everyone repeats the scene until you can almost smell the room. He sits formal as carved wood, they say, with clean sandals and a cloak too fine for the dust. He listens to Rome's proposal without blinking. Then he declines it with enough courtesy to fill a storage jar. He says peoples join best through trust, equal honor, and time. He does not say Rome has too many bachelors and too few aunties, though he could. He likely thinks it. People enjoy this story because it keeps everybody civilized. No insults fly, no doors slam. Only a carefully dressed king and a very awkward proposal share the same air for a while. Still, the refusal lands like all the others. Softer words do not change the answer. By now the Romans have circled hill after hill and found the same closed gate. The more they ask, the more obvious their need becomes. The more obvious the need becomes, the less desirable the match appears. It is a neat little trap, almost elegant in its irritation. Rome looks stronger every time you glance down the valley. Rome sounds less trustworthy every time someone returns from market. Those two truths now grow side by side, like vines pulling in opposite directions. You feel that widening gap in small daily ways. Mothers call daughters in a little earlier at dusk. Fathers ask more questions about any trader who comes from the river. At weddings, older women spend a little longer praising known families and settled homes. Nobody says Rome during those blessings. Everyone hears it anyway. One afternoon you carry washed wool to the flat rocks above the stream. You spread the locks to dry and look down toward the city. The air smells of sun on fleece and damp earth from the water's edge. Below, Rome shines with activity and innocent confidence. Fresh timber lies stacked in squared piles. A cart tips out stone chips beside a half-built lane. Men move like ants along the wall line, all purpose and no pause. For a moment, you almost admire Romulus. He sees a patch of ground and insists on a city. He sees refusal and calls it a stage in development. He might watch a roof collapse and name it an open-air redesign. It is absurd, and somehow it works just enough to stay annoying. You do not hate the Romans. That is the inconvenient part. They are not monsters below the hill. They are mostly men with sore hands, too much confidence, and a founder who mistakes boldness for a household plan. Some are probably decent husbands in the right place. The trouble is that Rome is not yet the right place, not for a daughter anyone loves. At the evening meal you say this aloud for the first time. Your father tears bread and nods without looking surprised. Your mother sets out radishes and a bowl of thick goat milk. Grandmother Fulvia gives you a long, approving look, which feels like passing an exam you did not request. Exactly, she says. A city may ask for wives when it has learned how to be visited without causing concern. Then she adds another invisible mark to her endless tally. The night settles over the terraces and cools the stones under your feet. The goats quiet in their pen, and the oil lamp hums softly beside the door. Across the valley, Rome keeps its little crown of smoke against the stars. It wants to be ancient already. It wants songs, families, and a line of descendants before the plaster even dries. But on your hill, among the olives and grain bins and old women who remember everything, reputation still outruns ambition. So you watch the new city from your settled one and keep your distance. You listen to the hammers fade into the dark and think how slowly trust sets compared with clay. You stand on the packed earth by your family door when the invitation first reaches your hill. The morning smells of warm goat hair and crushed thyme. Smoke rises from Rome across the valley in a neat new line. You have watched it for weeks while you shake crumbs from the cloth. It hangs above the river like a stubborn thought. It says that the little camp below is not leaving. Fresh-cut timber scents the air even this far uphill. The wind brings a faint clank of hammers from walls still going up. Your grandmother hears that clank and clicks her tongue. She says no good town introduces itself by hammering before dawn. A Roman messenger comes up the path with dust on his calves. He wears his best smile and nearly trips on a loose stone. You like that about him at once. A man who stumbles seems less alarming than a man who glides. He asks for water before he speaks. Your mother gives it in a clay cup with a chipped rim. He drinks too fast and wipes his mouth on the back of his hand. Then he lifts his voice as if he has climbed onto a stage. You hear the name of the feast before you hear the reason. It is the Consualia, held for Consus, god of stored grain and safekeeping. That part sounds sensible enough. Every hill family you know respects a god who remembers winter while summer still feels generous. The messenger says the altar of Consus lies under the earth. He says it is opened only on proper days. You picture a hidden stone under packed soil. You imagine hands brushing away dust and old straw. He says there will be offerings from the new city. He says there will be races and wrestling and running on the flat ground below. Your younger brothers love that part at once. They begin wrestling each other beside the doorway before the man finishes talking. The messenger promises a communal meal after the rites. He lingers on the words roasted meat with a care that seems practiced. He also says working animals will be garlanded and given rest. Your mother approves of that because she pities oxen more than many cousins. He says mules will wear flowers around their necks. Your grandmother says a flower does not improve a mule's judgment. The invitation is generous enough to sound almost polished. Rome may still smell of wet clay, but its manners arrive freshly combed. The messenger lists the guests with slow pride. Sabines are invited. Latins are invited. The people of Canina are invited too. He says no nearby hearth is forgotten. He says Romulus wants neighbors, friends, trade, laughter, and shared good fortune. This is how Romulus frames things even from a distance. Every questionable notion becomes bold civic innovation by the time it reaches your hill. If he ever makes a pitch deck for Rome, it would look very tidy. Excellent location, strong walls, one tiny missing part of the user base. The messenger speaks of benches set out in rows. He speaks of fresh bread, new wine, and Roman hospitality beyond compare. Your father snorts into his beard at that phrase. He says hospitality is easy to promise when your roofs still leak. You listen closely. You are young enough to like the shape of a new thing before you know its trouble. Rome is a new thing. It shines in your mind the way a copper pin shines before it turns dull. The messenger says the games will honor the god properly. He says the whole valley will come alive with song. He says men will race in the dust. He says boys will throw javelins at marked posts and boast too early. He says women may watch from shaded places. He says children will have sweet cakes if any remain after the crowd. Your mother asks if traders may bring wool and cheese. The messenger says yes, and perhaps bronze needles as well. That matters more than the races. Needles bend. Cheese travels. News travels faster than either. He says the altar will be uncovered at the right hour. Only then will the priest pour wine and grain. You picture the hidden place under the ground. The thought pleases you because it feels secret without feeling dangerous. A god tucked under the earth sounds practical. Grain also spends much of its life waiting in the dark. The messenger repeats that all are welcome. He adds that Rome especially wishes to honor its Sabine neighbors. That sounds flattering in the careful way a market seller flatters a woman holding a full purse. It may be true, and it may also be useful. Your grandmother wipes her hands on her apron and studies him. She studies people the way other women study weather. She asks why Rome suddenly feels so warm toward every village daughter. The messenger laughs, and then stops, because she does not. He says a festival needs a crowd. He says a new city must show a good face. That is also true. New cities and new babies both spend much of their time trying to convince everyone they are thriving. By evening, the invitation has traveled along every terrace above the river. Women knead dough while repeating each detail. Men lean on hoes and say little. Boys promise to race in Rome and return famous by sunset. You carry water from the spring and hear the news told 3 different ways. In each version, the meat grows larger. By the 4th retelling, the Roman benches are almost upholstered. You suspect this part is wishful thought. When dusk settles, your family eats lentil stew with onions and a heel of coarse bread. The talk turns serious with the second bowl. Your father tears bread into exact pieces while he thinks. He distrusts anything announced with a smile and no price. He says Rome is too new to be generous. He says men building walls do not usually pause for polished invitations. Your mother blows on her spoon before answering. She says even new cities need friends in trade, and perhaps wives for their sons. She says curiosity is not a sin. She says if every strange thing is refused, people end up talking only to their own goats. Your younger brothers immediately announce that they would like to talk to someone other than goats. Your grandmother says the goats likely feel the same. You say very little because you know your own voice will sound eager. You do not want eagerness noticed too early. Still, you think of the valley at festival time. You think of music carried over the grass and bright cloth in a crowd. You think of seeing Rome close for the first time. From your hill it is all smoke, timber, and rumor. Your mother sees the look on your face anyway. Mothers do not need good light for this work. She asks whether you wish to go. You say only that it might be interesting to see the altar opened. That is true, and not the whole truth. You also want to see who builds a city so quickly. You want to see how its streets lie. You want to hear how Romans talk when they are not sending messages uphill. Your father rubs his thumb along the rim of his bowl. He asks why Romulus invites unmarried women to public games with such care. No one answers at once. The lentils thicken while the question sits between you. Then your grandmother sets down her spoon with a small, hard sound. She has been waiting for this opening all day. She says very clearly, if a new city is this eager to feed you, it plans to keep you. The words land like a lid on a jar. Even your brothers stop moving for a moment. Your mother tells her not to be dramatic. Your grandmother says accuracy often receives that accusation. She begins counting on her fingers all the ways Rome already annoys her. First the smoke, then the hammering, then the smiling. Your father nearly smiles at that. He says the smiling may indeed be the worst sign. Your mother still wants to go. She says a whole valley will be there, and no Roman would dare misbehave before every neighbor. She says public rights are public for a reason. She says a god of harvest does not need secrets. Your grandmother mutters that hidden altars and blocked exits go together more often than people admit. No one quite knows what she means, though later everyone claims they did. You stir the last of the stew and feel your own thoughts divide. One half is caution, and one half is bright, restless interest. The bright half is stronger when you lie down that night. Through the doorway you can see Rome's far fire line against the dark. You fall asleep to faint hammer blows. Even their rhythm sounds ambitious. While you sleep under wool blankets that smell of sun and sheep, Rome does not sleep much at all. Down by the river, torches move along half-made streets. Men carry planks on their shoulders and stack benches in rough rows. The place smells of Tiber clay and raw wood shavings. It smells like a workshop pretending very hard to be a city. Romulus walks the packed ground with quick steps and a lifted chin. He likes a problem best when he can rename it a plan. He has invited everyone properly. He has arranged priests, races, garlands, meat, and the right amount of sacred talk. Now he gathers the Roman men out of public hearing. He does this in a yard behind fresh walls that still shed dust. You are not there, of course. You sit on your own hill, dreaming of festival cakes that are probably smaller than advertised. Still, later you learn enough of that talk to picture it plainly. Rome is never shy with a story once the story has happened. Romulus tells his men the crowd will be large. He says the Sabines will come, and the Latins, and the people of Caenina. He says they have built a city and filled it with men. He says a city of only men is a very long campfire. This is Rome's founding problem in its simplest form. Fine walls, good river, robust fields, very poor results in the category of women. Romulus treats that gap like a practical shortage, almost like missing roof tiles. He simply calls for acquisition and moves to the next point. He tells each man to watch for the signal. He tells them not to grab wildly and ruin the order. That detail feels especially Roman. Even bad ideas want proper staging once officials become involved. He says they are to seize unmarried women only. He says no one is to use a blade, a fist, or ugly language. He says each woman is to be carried home as an honored wife. He says affection may follow after everyone calms down. This is in its own clumsy way an early draft of the shotgun wedding. Several legal steps are still missing which future lawyers would admire from a safe distance. Among the Roman men stands a young one with narrow shoulders and honest, worried eyes. He listens as if he has misplaced something important. He is called Marcus. At this point, he has not yet complicated your life with apologies. He grips the edge of his belt while Romulus speaks. He looks like a man told to host a banquet after learning to boil water yesterday. Romulus explains the sign with a showman's care. At the chosen moment, he will rise and lift his cloak. Some say he will shake it out. Some say he will fold it back over his shoulder. Rome already disagrees about choreography. The men nod because leaders enjoy nodding in front of other leaders. A few men grin too hard and too soon. Marcus does not grin at all. He looks toward the gate as if there might still be time for everyone to take up basket weaving instead. Romulus reminds them that this is for the future of the city. He says posterity likes courage and forgets awkward beginnings. That is another one of his gifts. He can turn a deeply inconvenient plan into something that almost sounds ceremonial. By morning, the invitation has become village law. Your father agrees that the family will go together and stay together. He says no one wanders. He says no one accepts private offers of wine, seats, or city tours. Your mother packs flatbread wrapped in cloth, though there will surely be food there. She trusts hosts, but not their portions. You help her tie up olives in a small skin bag. You add a little cheese and 2 figs without announcing your generosity. Your grandmother brings her own cup because she distrusts strange cups. She says you never know whose lip has improved them. You wash your face in cool water from the jar. You smooth your hair with oil that smells faintly of bay leaves. You choose your cleaner dress, which is still plain enough for a country road. The hem brushes your ankles when you walk. You wrap a dark shawl against the morning chill. Then you unwrap it because the sun already feels warm. These small decisions take longer than they should. Festival mornings always do, even when a trap sits under the ribbons. Your father checks the straps on the donkey twice. He ties down a basket of cheese as if Rome might try to steal that first. The path down from your settlement curves between stone walls and terraced fields. Early light lies on the grain like pale honey. Other families join the track by 2s and 3s. Sandals scuff dust from the dry ground in a soft, steady cloud. You hear Latin words from one group ahead. You hear Sabine voices behind you discussing whether Roman wine will taste young and sour. Children run until mothers call them back. Older men walk with staves and the grave calm of people intending to be unimpressive. You carry a basket on one hip for part of the way. The handle leaves a red mark on your palm. The valley opens slowly as the path descends. The Tiber flashes between reeds with a dull green shine. From closer down, Rome looks less like a thought and more like a job still in progress. Timber frames stand raw against the sky. You see new walls where pale stone meets darker mud. You see men on ladders, still working though guests already stream in. Hammer blows ring from one side, flutes answer from another. Rome seems unable to do one thing at a time. Dust rises from the unpaved streets and settles on everyone equally. This is perhaps the city's first truly fair policy. At the gate, Roman attendants wave guests inward with broad, cheerful arms. Their smiles now come in matching sets. Someone has hung fresh greenery over the entrance. It droops a little in the heat, but the effort is clear. A boy passes with a basket of laurel sprigs for decoration. Another boy follows with a broom and a very tired face. The smell reaches you before the welcome does. Meat roasts over open fires in long, greasy breaths. There is also onion, smoke, and fresh bread warming on flat stones. Under it all sits the river smell of clay and reeds. Your stomach answers that smell at once. Your grandmother says traps also smell good, which is how they remain employed. Inside, the city is crowded in a way your hill never is. Every lane holds sandals, cloaks, baskets, elbows, and chatter. You move slowly with your family because there is no other way to move. Dust powders the edge of your dress. Roman men offer directions with eager hands. Roman women are fewer, and they watch the guests with careful faces. You notice that absence without naming it fully. A place feels different when one half of ordinary life is missing. A priestly space has been cleared near the ground set aside for games. There the hidden altar of Consus will be opened. For now you see only packed earth and a marked stone. People stand around it with the pleased patience of festival watchers. Someone explains that the altar sleeps beneath the ground between feast days. He says the god likes stored things, hidden things, and timing. That suits a harvest god very well. Grain also prefers not to advertise itself to every passing beak. Mules stand nearby with reeves over their harness straps. One gray mule looks personally offended by flowers. An ox blinks under a loop of greenery and enjoys a day without pulling. Your mother smiles at that more than at the athletes. The games begin with runners in short tunics. Their feet drum the dust flat while boys shout advice nobody requested. Then come wrestlers, oiled and solemn, trying very hard to look heroic in front of strangers and cousins. Your brothers press forward to watch. Your father keeps a hand on each shoulder and drags them back by the neckcloth. You find a place near a post where there is a little shade. From there you can see the field and part of the feast area. The crowd is broad and mixed, just as promised. Sabines cluster together in bright woven bands and familiar speech. Latins laugh in a different rhythm nearby. The people of Canina carry themselves as if they were invited last and noticed. No one wants to look too impressed. Everyone is, a little. The Roman hosts move through the crowd with trays and pitchers. They pour wine cut with water and praise the city without rest. A nervous young Roman stops near you with a jug. He nearly spills it on his own sandals while offering your family a drink. Your grandmother refuses first, because of course she does. Your mother accepts, because refusing everything is its own kind of theater. The young man bows too deeply to both. Then he straightens and looks relieved to have survived the exchange. You do not know his name yet. You only notice that he thanks guests more often than guests thank him. The feast grounds spread wider than you expected. Long boards rest on trestles, and rough benches line both sides. Loaves sit in baskets under cloths to keep away flies. Bowls of figs and nuts wait in tidy heaps. A pot of chickpeas simmers beside a larger pot you cannot see into. Steam carries bay leaf, garlic, and marrow. Women from several villages inspect the cooking with that calm, sharp gaze no priest can imitate. A stew must prove itself honestly. Children chase each other around stacked jars of water. An older Roman woman swats them away with a reed fan. She does it without heat. Festival order is mostly a matter of moving small feet out of large paths. The priests at last clear the space around the hidden altar. Dust is brushed aside with bundled reeds and careful hands. A stone slab appears beneath the earth like a tooth uncovered in old bread. People lean forward at once. Wine is poured. Grain is scattered. The priest lifts his palms and calls on Consus to bless stores, beasts, and households. You like the sound of that list. It includes the things that actually fill a year. The prayers are brief enough for hungry people to bear with grace. Even gods understand that roasting meat has its own schedule. After the rites, the mood loosens. Music rises from pipes and small drums, and children forget every serious instruction. The crowd shifts toward food with one shared intention. This may be the truest religious instinct on display all day. Your family settles at the edge of a bench. The wood is rough and leaves faint fibers on your palm. Your father places your grandmother between himself and the aisle. This is protection for Rome as much as for her. Your mother smooths her dress before sitting. She always behaves as if a decent seat deserves a decent posture. You break bread and dip it into a bowl of lentils richer than the ones at home. Someone has added leeks and a little pork fat. There are roasted onions so soft they collapse at a touch. There are olives wrinkled with salt and cheese still cool at the center. A Roman server brings slices of browned meat on a flat board. He presents them with the expression of a man unveiling a civic triumph. Rome does this all day. It keeps trying to sell itself from several angles at once. If the festival had a public notice board, it would deserve terrible reviews. Event description misleading. Consent policy omitted. Venue exits oddly busy. You do not think that in those words, of course. You simply notice that the gates now seem watched with unusual care. It may mean nothing. New hosts often fear confusion more than guests do. Still, your father notices too. He chews slowly and keeps glancing toward the open space where the games resume. Your mother tells him to eat while the food is hot. Suspicion, she says, is poor seasoning. Your grandmother mutters her line again into her cup. If a new city is this eager to feed you, it plans to keep you. Your brothers roll their eyes because they are young. They will later repeat those exact words to anyone willing to listen. Around you, the noise rises and falls in soft waves. Laughter travels. Clay cups knock. A baby fusses, then sleeps. The sun moves higher and warms the back of your neck. Dust settles in the crease of your sandal straps. The nervous Roman with the wine jug passes again. This time he carries a tray of nuts, and honey cakes. He looks at the crowd, then at the officials near the field, then back at the crowd. He has the air of a man who misplaced his peace of mind before breakfast. You take a honey cake, because refusing would only confuse him further. It sticks pleasantly to your fingers. For a moment, the day feels almost ordinary. Ordinary if your ordinary includes hidden altars and founders with suspiciously broad hospitality. Romulus appears at the edge of the field in a cloak cleaner than any wall builder deserves. He moves like a man inspecting a successful event. People watch him because founders are still a novelty, also because he clearly watches himself enough for several people. He speaks with priests, then with attendants, then with men posted near the benches. Each conversation is short and tidy. From where you sit, you cannot hear his words. You can only see hands, nods, and the small stiff care beneath the cheer. Horses are led past for another race. Their coats shine where they have been brushed and rubbed with oil. A boy carries a bucket of water and slops half of it on his legs. No one notices because everyone is watching the track. Your mother asks whether you want more bread. You say yes, and she tears a piece from the loaf before you finish. These are the motions you know best. Hands passing food. A family taking up space together on a bench. The city around you is still strange, but this small circle is not. It steadies you more than you realize. Beyond the bench, Roman streets run off in dusty lines between raw new buildings. Some walls are still only waist high. You smell fresh plaster in one gust of wind. In the next you smell hot fat, trampled mint, and sun-warmed wool. The valley beyond the city still shows its green terraces. The Sabine hills look close enough to touch across the light. You glance back toward them and feel the old comfort of their shape. Then you turn again toward Rome because you cannot help it. New things pull at the eye. Even grandmother Fulvia keeps checking how the timber joints fit. She says they are rushed. Then she admits they are not badly rushed, which is almost generous praise from her. A crier calls for attention near the field. Another round of games is about to start and people shift toward better views. Your father tells everyone to stay close. Your mother gathers the basket under the bench with her foot. You brush crumbs from your lap and stand with the others. The honey on your fingers has gone tacky in the heat. Around you, guests rise from benches and grass patches in a slow, wide rustle. Sandals scrape. Children are lifted onto hips. The crowd looks merry from a distance. Up close, it is simply many ordinary bodies making room with mild impatience. You hear a mule snort under its flower wreath. You hear a hammer strike far off where a wall is still unfinished. Rome keeps building, even while it hosts. That, more than anything, feels like the truest sign of it. Nothing here is finished. Not the streets, not the walls, not the manners, not the plan. You stand with your family among neighbors and strangers. The dust is warm under your feet, and the day shines plainly. Then, somewhere near the field, Romulus lifts his hand to settle his cloak. You come down from the Sabine hills in your best wool dress before the sun grows hot. The hem brushes dry thyme and dusty grass. Your sandals pick up pale chalk from the path. The valley below smells of fresh-cut timber and the damp clay of the Tiber. Rome sits across the rise like a thought that has not decided what shape it wants. You see low roofs of reed and clay. You see new walls with gaps still waiting for stone. You hear hammers striking in slow, bright taps that carry across the air. Your grandmother Fulvia stands at the doorway and watches you go with her lips pressed flat. She says Rome is a place built by men who mistake noise for wisdom. She says any city that rises this fast is either blessed or badly supervised. She says she predicted trouble when its first cooking smoke appeared on the horizon. She keeps a public tally of her correct warnings on little pebbles in a bowl. No one asks for this tally. She provides it anyway. Today she taps the bowl with one finger and tells you not to add another stone. You promise you are only going for a festival. You say there will be music and games and market stalls. You say the Romans want peace with their neighbors. You say people do not usually plan crimes around honey cakes. Fulvia snorts into her shawl. She tells you that men often plan nonsense around honey cakes. She tells you to keep your penknife near your belt. Then she smooths your braid with her rough hand and sends you on your way. The path down is full of other Sabines in festival clothes. You pass girls with ribbon at their wrists. You pass old men with clean cloaks and stiff knees. You pass boys carrying baskets of cheese wrapped in leaves and still trying to look serious. The sun climbs a little higher as you cross the valley. You hear pipes and small drums before you reach the first houses. You smell roasting meat, lamp oil, trampled herbs, and sawdust from beams cut only days ago. The Romans have decorated with an honesty that is almost sweet. They hang garlands wherever a peg will hold. They sweep the open ground with branch brooms. They spread bright cloth over tables that wobble if anyone leans too hard. You enter among neighbors and cousins and strangers who all try to look relaxed. There are men from hill farms. There are Latin families from nearby fields. There are Romans everywhere, smiling too quickly and speaking too warmly, like hosts at a feast who have rehearsed their welcome. You tell yourself that this is simply what new cities do. A new city must charm people or become a very lonely pile of timber. Rome seems to understand this. It offers food first and questions second. That part is wise. A broad, open space has been cleared for the games. Dust lies soft under your feet. The ground has been stamped flat by many sandals. A ring of torches waits for evening like upright bundles of captured sunset. Vendors stand behind planks laid over barrels and crates. You see olives glistening in bowls. You see onions with their papery skins still on. You see loaves marked by finger dents where the dough rose under cloth. One woman ladles chickpea stew into clay cups. The steam smells of garlic and leek. A skin of oil shines on top. You take one cup and feel its heat through the baked clay and into your palms. A boy offers figs split open with his thumb. Their seeds glitter like tiny beads. Sticky juice catches on your fingers. You lick it away while pretending to listen to a Roman explain where the best view of the races will be. He speaks as if he invented views. That seems to happen often here. Rome has many men who talk about ordinary things with the confidence of discoverers. You suspect their founder sets the tone. You see Romulus at a distance more than once. He moves through the crowd with easy shoulders and a cloak arranged just so. He has the look of a man giving himself excellent advice in real time. Every gesture says bold civic innovation, even when he is only pointing at benches. If Rome ever makes a pitch deck, you think, it writes itself. Excellent location. Strong walls in progress. Good river access. Robust farming nearby. One critical gap in the user base. Female users. Immediate acquisition strategy pending. You smile despite yourself and reach for another fig. Music starts near the center of the open ground. Two flute players stand back to back. A man taps a small frame drum with careful fingers. The beat is light and steady and easy for walking, talking, and pretending not to stare at the people from the next valley. Children dart between adults like swallows. Their ankles flash in the dust. Someone loses a sandal and finds it again under a bench. An old dog sleeps under a cart and does not wake, even when a trumpet gives a test note nearby. As the day leans toward evening, servants and boys begin to clear part of the track. People press inward with the pleased murmur that comes before a spectacle. Torches are brought closer. The smoke rises sweet and bitter from fresh pine resin. You hear someone say the altar of Consus will be shown. You have heard of this Roman custom. The god's altar lies hidden under the earth most of the year. It sleeps beneath the racing ground until the festival calls it up. That alone would bring a crowd. You edge forward between two women with baskets on their arms. Your sleeve catches on a brooch. Someone apologizes. Someone laughs. A little child asks too loudly whether gods mind being dusty. The answer seems to be no. Men begin to scrape back the top layer of packed soil. The work is careful and ceremonial. The one laborer clearly wants to use a larger tool. Flat shovels lift earth and meat slices. Dust drifts up in pale clouds and settles on hair, shoulders, and eyelashes. Little by little the hidden stone appears. First you see a line, then a corner, then the full top of the altar with its worn edges and old stains of oil and ash. The crowd makes that soft shared sound people make when something promised becomes real. Torchlight touches the stone and warms it into gold. Fresh barley is scattered around the base. A priest pours wine in a thin, dark stream. The smell rises sharp and sweet, and mixes with smoke, wool, sweat, and trampled mint. The whole place turns lovely in a way that feels almost unfair. You stand with one hand on your cup and simply look. The torches move in the evening breeze. The musicians change tune. The first stars begin to show above the half-built roofs and the dark line of the hills. For a moment Rome seems gentle. The city smells less like wet clay and work, It smells like feast food and lamp smoke and 100 oiled braids. You almost forgive the walls for still being unfinished. A Roman girl near you points at the altar and whispers a prayer. Her mother straightens the fold of her shawl. A man behind you tears bread into small, neat pieces before eating. Someone passes around dates from a woven tray and takes care not to drop the stones. Even the ground underfoot feels softened by the hour. The day's heat leaves the dust. Cool air comes down from the hills. You tuck your hands into your sleeves for a moment and watch sparks drift upward from the torches. If festivals come with review tablets, this one looks promising so far. The event description would mention music, races, food, and a rare sacred reveal. It would not mention any problem with exits. That detail remains very much in the hidden notes. You spot Hercilia not far away. You do not know her well, though you know her face. She stands straight and calm beside other Sabine women. She wears her veil pinned so neatly that even the breeze seems to respect it. People make space around her without meaning to. She does not demand room. She simply receives it. She has the sort of quiet composure that makes a crowded place behave better for no clear reason. You move closer to a cousin and adjust your own shawl. You notice small things because the hour invites small things. There is ash on your cousin's cheek. There is a loose stitch near your cuff. There is fennel seed stuck between your teeth from a sausage you ate too quickly. More food arrives from somewhere behind the Roman houses. Platters of roast goat pass overhead on strong arms. Bowls of lentils go by with spoons already sunk inside. There are cheese rounds with the rinds still dusty from storage shelves. You have never seen so much assembled in one place. Honey cakes sit stacked in sticky towers. Apples shine in woven baskets. Jugs of watered wine line a table so new that bark still clings to one edge. This is the sort of feast that makes suspicion feel rude. You begin to think your grandmother may need to remove one pebble from her bowl. That thought lasts almost exactly the length of one breath. Across the open space, Romulus lifts a hand to his cloak. The motion is small enough to miss if you are laughing or chewing. He adjusts the cloth at one shoulder as if it has slipped. He does it with the calm of a man smoothing a wrinkle before guests notice. Then the crowd changes shape around you. Roman men who looked loose and idle suddenly move with purpose. They turn inward at the same time. Their eyes stop wandering. Their hands reach out through gaps in the crowd with an order too neat to be chance. You do not understand at first. You think perhaps the races are starting. You think perhaps a wagon is loose. You think perhaps someone important has entered, and all this movement is the usual human habit of getting in one another's way. Then a woman beside you gasps and drops her cup. Clay breaks underfoot. Wine darkens the dust. A Roman grips her arm above the elbow and pulls her backward. She twists toward her brother, and her brother already has two men between them. The music breaks without stopping. One flute player keeps blowing from shock alone. The drum stutters and then falls silent. Somewhere a trumpet lets out a note so wrong and startled that it sounds like a goose having second thoughts. Shouts rise all at once and refuse to become words. You hear your own people call names into the crowd. You hear Roman voices speaking low and hard. You hear children crying because the adults have changed their faces. The torchlight suddenly looks different. It no longer warms the stone and cloth. It throws long arms across dust and legs and hands. It catches on bronze brooches and open mouths and eyes gone wide. You turn toward your cousin and lose sight of her at once. Bodies press between you. A man's shoulder knocks your basket away. Someone catches your wrist, not cruelly at first, just firmly, like a person reaching for a falling jar. Then the grip tightens. You pull back and feel the cloth at your sleeve strain against the seam. Your penknife sits useless under your belt because there is no room to move your hand. The smell of crushed mint rises from the ground where someone's garland has been trodden flat. The Roman holding you is young. His face looks pale under the torchlight. He looks less like a wolf than like a man who has agreed to carry a pig indoors and now regrets the logistics. That does not improve the situation. You say no before you think of better words. He says your name? No, he does not know your name. He says please, which is stranger. He says it in a hoarse rush, as if politeness might fix the shape of this evening. Around you the seizure spreads in rings. Pairs and trios of Roman men pull women from fathers, brothers, cousins, and friends. Some women hit with fists, Some freeze, some shout until the sound tears rough in their throats. The Sabine men are unarmed. They have festival cloaks, walking sticks, fruit knives, and the kind of dignity that does not cut through a coordinated Roman plan. They lunge forward and then stop when more Romans close around them. You see one old man swing a basket, dates fly everywhere. For a blink, the ground is absurdly full of rolling fruit. A boy dives after one out of habit and gets yanked upright by his mother. Shame arrives almost faster than fear. You see it in the faces of the men from your hills. They came to a feast, not a fight. Their hands are empty. Their women are being dragged away under torchlight while the hidden altar of a god watches from the ground. Some try to reach you anyway. A cousin of yours pushes through 2 Romans and almost gets to your side. He has breadcrumbs stuck in his beard. He looks so shocked by his own uselessness that it hurts to see. Then 3 men turn him back. No one has drawn a sword. That makes the whole thing feel more unreal. It is all grappling and shouting and blocked paths and hands at wrists and waists and shoulders. You think briefly that this is how sheep must feel at market. One moment there is sunlight and chewing and other sheep. The next there are hands and gates and a future selected by people with opinions. It is not a flattering thought, but accuracy rarely flatters. The young Roman keeps hold of you. He wraps his cloak partly around your shoulders, as if concealment improves abduction. It smells of wool, smoke, and the sharp green of bay leaves. You push at his chest and feel his heart racing like a trapped bird. He says again that he is sorry. You would like to tell him to begin with letting go. The crowd pushes hard from behind. Another Roman calls for the gates. Someone shouts Romulus's name with a cheer that makes her stomach turn. You catch a glimpse of him on higher ground. Romulus stands above the confusion, with his profile clear against the torchlight. He raises both hands like a host, asking guests to settle. It is the posture of a man announcing a bold new policy after forgetting to consult several essential parties. History will call this clever statecraft. If lawyers exist in some calmer future, they will call it an incomplete contract with severe consent issues. Romulus has, in essence, invented the shotgun wedding while skipping many steps later generations will consider rather important. The thought arrives and vanishes in the same instant. Your feet are moving, whether you agree or not. The young Roman guides you out of the press with one hand at your arm. He does not drag once he gains space. He steers breathless and trembling, as if leading a skittish mule he hopes not to offend further. Behind you, Sabine voices thin with distance. The men are being pushed back toward the open ground and the roads beyond. Some run because there is nothing else to do. Some run to gather help. Some run with burning faces, because to stay and fail in front of everyone is worse than leaving to plan what comes next. You know that shame will travel faster than any messenger. By tomorrow, every hilltop hearth will have the story. Grandmother Fulvia will need no pebble. She will likely demand a larger bowl. At the edge of the festival space, the noise drops strangely. It does not stop. It muffles, as if a thick cloth has been laid over the evening. You hear sobbing nearby. You hear sandals on packed earth. You hear men speaking in low, urgent bursts that try to sound soothing and mostly fail. The way into Rome lies ahead under unfinished walls. Fresh timber frames darken in the night air. Stones sit stacked beside doorways waiting for daylight and labor. Clay daub on one wall is still damp enough to hold a thumb mark. The gate stands open for Romans and closed to sense. You pass inside with several other women and several other men. A guard swings one leaf of the gate shut behind a group entering. The wood thumps into place with a sound both ordinary and terrible. You look back once through the narrowing gap. Beyond it, the valley lies silver under the rising moon. The Sabine road curves away through brush and pale dust. For one small aching moment you want nothing in the world but your grandmother's smoky doorway and her relentless, unbearable correctness. Inside the walls, Rome is quieter than you expect. The city is still small. Houses sit low and scattered. The lanes are unpaved and rutted from carts. Puddles from afternoon water hauling reflect torchlight in broken strips. The smell changes with every few steps. You pass a tannery pit and then a bread oven. You pass damp clay, hot ash, goat droppings, and crushed fennel underfoot. Somewhere close by, a baby starts to cry and keeps crying with admirable dedication. The young Roman does not speak for a while. His hand loosens from your arm but does not leave. You can feel him deciding and then rejecting many possible sentences. None of them seem equal to the moment, which is fair. You walk beside other captured women. Some are angry and loud, some are silent in the stunned way that swallows sound entirely. One woman has lost one earring and keeps touching the empty ear as if that missing weight explains everything. Hercilia walks ahead of you. She is pale, though everyone is pale under torchlight. She keeps her chin level. When one younger girl begins to shake, Hercilia reaches back without looking and takes her hand. That one small act steadies half the street. You follow because there is nothing else to do. The Romans around you notice her calm and behave a little more carefully. Even now, in this ugly new arrangement, she somehow makes the room larger. Some men on the roadside stare as you pass. Some look embarrassed. Some look pleased in the vague, self-congratulatory way of men who admire a plan because it is bold. You decide at once that bold is a dangerous word in Roman mouths. The young man beside you clears his throat. He tries once to speak and fails. He tries again and says, very softly, that he is called Marcus. The name lands between you like a dropped spoon. You do not answer. That seems sensible. Marcus nods to himself as if silence confirms his worst expectations. He adjusts the edge of his cloak again. Perhaps all Roman plans begin with cloak management. Perhaps this whole city is one badly timed wardrobe decision. You turn down a narrower lane. Walls rise close on both sides and hold the warmth of the day. A string of onions hangs from a beam above one doorway. A dog lifts its head from a threshold and then decides this is too much drama to engage with. Hammering still comes faintly from somewhere beyond the houses. Even at night, Rome keeps building itself. A late crew sets stones by torchlight. The clank carries over the roofs in patient intervals, like the city muttering that it has no time to pause for ordinary human complications. Marcus leads you to a modest house near the inner side of the wall. The doorway is low. A lamp burns in a niche. There is a new reed mat at the threshold that has already begun to fray on one corner. He stops before entering. For the first time since the festival, he lets go of your arm completely. The skin there feels warm where his hand has been and cold where the night air touches it. He looks at you with the face of a man about to apologize for the sea. His hair is full of dust. There is a tear in the hem of his tunic. He appears to understand that none of this improves his case. Inside, the house smells of lentils and smoke. It also smells faintly of plaster that is not fully dried. A storage jar stands near the wall with a chipped rim. A low stool has one leg wrapped with cord where it split and was repaired. Marcus gestures you in and then seems to regret the gesture. You step inside because the street offers no better choice. The room is clean in the earnest way of a place prepared too quickly. A folded blanket lies on a wooden chest. A bowl of water waits on a bench beside a strip of linen. He begins his first apology before the door bar settles. He says he is sorry. He says he knows that is too small. He says he did not choose the plan, which you find a very Roman sentence because he also clearly participated in it. You finally look at him properly. He cannot be much older than you. His hands are rough from work. There is dirt under one thumbnail and a fresh scrape across his knuckles that looks as if a wall won. He keeps speaking because stopping would require courage of another kind. He says Romulus explained that Rome needed wives and households and future children. He says it was presented as necessary for the city's survival. He says this was, apparently meant to sound noble. You stare until he winces. The silence lengthens. A lamp crackles. Outside, someone laughs too loudly and then hushes at once. A cartwheel bumps over a rut and complains to the whole street. Marcus rubs a hand over his face. He says he knows this is bad. He says bad is also too small. He says he has been trying, since the exact moment he caught your arm, to think of a sentence that is not idiotic. This effort does not save him, but it does make him human. He offers the bowl of water. The linen beside it is coarse but clean. Dust from the festival streaks your hands and wrists. There is a faint bruise already darkening where someone grabbed you in the crowd. You wash because your body wants one normal act. The water goes cloudy with soil and ash. A bit of crushed green from some trampled herb floats to the surface. You wipe your face and neck and feel yourself return to your skin by degrees. Marcus turns away while you do this. That courtesy is small and late and still real. He says there is bread, if you can eat. He says there are olives and lentils left from supper. and a blanket near the hearth because the night may turn cool. You do not trust the room or him or Rome or the shape of tomorrow. Still, you notice the bread is fresh enough to bend before breaking. You notice the lentils have carrot and onion in them. You notice the blanket is better wool than you expected from a city built half from ambition and half from wet clay. Mundane things continue with insulting loyalty. A moth circles the lamp. The lentil pot has a cracked handle. Somewhere in the back room, a mouse drops something tiny and dry and then goes still. Marcus notices you hearing it. He says the mouse belongs to the house more than he does. He says he has been losing arguments to it for weeks. You almost laugh, which feels disloyal to your circumstances. Instead, you sit on the edge of the wooden chest. The lid creaks under your weight. Your dress is dusty to the knee. The braid down your back has loosened, and one pin is missing. Marcus stands by the doorway as if ready to flee his own home. He says you may take the sleeping space and he will stay by the door. He says he will not touch you. He says he understands that his word is worth very little tonight. That at least is true. The city outside settles by slow degrees. Voices sink. Steps pass and then stop passing. From far off, near the wall, you hear one final hammer strike, and then another, as if Rome itself cannot sleep until it has added one more stone. You think of the festival ground. You think of the hidden altar brought into light. You think of cups broken in dust. You think of Sabine men driven back with empty hands and hot shame. You think of your grandmother's pebble bowl. By now, in your mind, it is overflowing. Marcus brings the bread and sets it within reach, without coming near. He adds a small dish of salt, which is oddly careful. He sets down 3 olives, and then after a pause that tells on him, adds 2 more. You eat a little because refusing food does not undo anything. The bread tastes of smoke and barley. The olives are wrinkled and sharp. Your mouth works slowly, as if chewing belongs to someone else. Marcus tries one more apology, softer than the rest. He says he is sorry for the walk. He says he is sorry for the gate closing. He says he is sorry for every part he can name, and several parts he has not yet found names for. It is the first of many. You can tell already. The night deepens around the small house. The lamp burns lower. Rome breathes through its walls of timber and clay, and you sit awake inside the new city, listening to a nervous young Roman apologize to the dark. You press your thumb into a narrow patch of soil beside your doorway, and the earth gives way softly. The little garden still looks more hopeful than impressive. Still, the onion shoots stand upright, and the beans have begun to take themselves seriously. You tip water from a clay jar with both hands, because the handle has a crack and cannot be trusted. The water smells faintly of the Tiber. The wet dirt smells dark and rich beneath the fresh-cut timber of Rome's new walls. Behind you, hammers ring against stone in patient, uneven beats. Rome is always building something, even when nobody can quite agree what it is. You have begun to know the hours by sound. Morning is goats and grinding stones. Midday is hammering. Evening is people arguing kindly over supper. You still miss the Sabine hills each time you look north. From this side of the valley, your home sits in bands of green terraces and pale tracks. The pastures look peaceful enough to insult you. You pinch a yellow leaf from a bean vine and rub it between your fingers. Your hands have changed since the festival. They smell of Roman smoke now, and barley flour, and the sharp little leaves of kitchen herbs. You do not love that sentence, but there it is. Marcus appears in the lane with a basket and the expression of a man approaching a shrine. He always looks like this before speaking to you. He looks as if one wrong word might wake an angry god from a nap. Today he brings lentils, a heel of cheese, and a small cup of honey. He also brings an apology, because he has made a habit of carrying one everywhere. You accept the basket first. You let the apology hover a moment in the air. He says the lentils are good lentils. He says the cheese is from a cousin who is less dishonest than most cheese sellers. Then he says he is sorry again for the entire founding arrangement of Rome. You almost laugh, though not unkindly. He apologizes now in categories, as if sorting a storeroom. Some days he is sorry for the festival. Some days he is sorry for Romulus. Some days he seems sorry for male ambition in general. He tries very hard. This does not always help. You ask if he remembered salt this time. He brightens as if he has passed an exam. He produces a little twist of cloth with salt inside. He even keeps it dry. This counts as improvement. Marcus is now marginally more useful than a worried goat, which is progress by any fair measure. You carry the basket indoors and set it near the hearth. The room is small, but it has begun to hold your shape. Your folded shawl rests on a peg. Your water bowl sits where your hand reaches for it without thinking. A reed mat lies near the bed. A low stool leans against the wall. A little cup with a chipped rim has become yours by use alone. This is how a life begins to settle around you. Not grandly, more like dust finding corners. Outside a horn sound from the northern track. It is not an alarm. It is too measured for that. It has the long, formal note of men arranging themselves into importance. Marcus hears it too, and his face changes before he says a word. You both look toward the hills. Beyond the unfinished roofs, a thin line of dust lifts into the pale air. Your people are coming, everyone says. They have been coming for days now, with great certainty and very little speed. No one marches faster for adding speeches. The Sabines, however, do enjoy a speech before any serious walking begins. You know this because you've stood through many of them on cold mornings. A king clears his throat. Shields shine in the sun. Men pull their belts straighter and look noble, while their wives wonder if they remembered lunch. Far across the valley, King Titus Tatius is almost certainly doing all of this now. You can picture him without effort. His beard is orderly. His cloak falls in exact folds. He always looks slightly too formal for the ground beneath his feet. You suspect the goat would feel underdressed. The stories reach Rome in pieces, carried by traders, cousins, and boys who run messages for the joy of being important. They say Titus Tatius gathers the hill settlements one by one. They say polished shields lean in meat rows beside stacked spears and travel sacks. They say the army smells of leather, oil, and wool cloaks warmed by the morning sun. They say he speaks with great dignity beside an altar stone. He reminds every man present of fathers' fields and stolen daughters. He almost certainly pauses at the proper places. He almost certainly lets the silence settle before each noble phrase. You know the style well. The Sabines do not merely prepare. They prepare ceremonially. Someone always adjusts a strap. Someone always asks where the waterskins are. Someone always pretends not to be that person. In your mind, you can see your grandmother Fulvia standing just behind the rows of men, with her mouth set. She predicted disaster the day Rome's first smoke rose on the horizon. Since then, she has kept an invisible tally of every proof. You can nearly hear her voice over the shields. There, she would say, was the smoke. There was the wall. There was the festival invitation that promised games and forgot key details. The Consualia would still get 0 stars from her. Misleading event description. Venue exit blocked. Consent policy suspiciously absent. If Fulvia ever learns what an Eventbrite listing is, she will hate it on principle. You stir the lentils into a pot with water and a scrap of onion. The stew begins thin and pale. Then the bubbles rise and the lentils soften, and the whole room smells warmer than your thoughts. You add a little salt, crushed coriander, and 2 leaves from the herb patch outside. Marcus watches as if cooking might solve politics. It cannot, though it improves the waiting. You have learned enough Latin now to follow most market talk. You know the words for barley, jug, goat, roof beam, hurry, move aside, and that price is insulting. You know the words children use first, which tells you something about Rome. You know bread, cup, dog, hot, mine, and no. You know please less often, though some households are trying. Sometimes a word comes to you in Sabine first and Latin second. Sometimes they arrive together and sit beside each other quietly. Sometimes you dream in a muddle of both and wake with the strange comfort of understanding half a sentence. Hercilia says language is like wool on a loom. One thread feels weak. Many threads hold. You like listening to her because she never raises her voice, yet rooms shift around her. She walks through Rome as if she has always planned to be here. Men with spears move aside without quite noticing they have done it. When the women gather at the well, Hercilia stands with one hand on the rope and asks practical questions. Who needs grain? Who needs sandals mended? Which child has fever? Which roof leak from the wind turns west? She makes order out of a thing that never deserved to work. You suspect Rome survives less by Romulus and more by women deciding supper still has to happen. Romulus, meanwhile, continues to describe every questionable decision as bold civic innovation. If he ever presents Rome's founding pitch to a room of merchants, you can already hear it. Excellent location, strong defensive walls, Robust farm output, one critical gap in our user base, female users. We are pivoting to acquisition. It remains the least charming sales speech in memory. The hammers on the wall sound louder that afternoon. Men carry stones in slings and stack them near the gate. Boys run messages. Dogs bark at everyone equally. The city has not yet learned how to be afraid properly. It is too new for polished panic. People keep doing chores while glancing north. A woman kneads dough with one hand and shades her eyes with the other. A potter turns his wheel as if war can wait until this jar is finished. You sweep your floor because dust keeps arriving no matter what kings decide. The broom is bound from stiff reeds. It whispers over packed earth and pushes yesterday into a neat little pile. There is great comfort in a swept floor. It suggests the world has edges and can be managed. Outside, Marcus argues with a chicken that has developed civic confidence. It belongs to no one and everyone. It pecks at grain near the lane and refuses to move for sandals. Marcus loses this contest, which feels fitting. At dusk, the dust line in the north grows thicker. The sunlight catches it and turns the whole rising column gold. For a moment, it looks almost beautiful, which is annoying. From somewhere beyond the walls, you think you hear many feet striking the road in rhythm. It is a far sound, more felt than heard. Sandals on packed earth make a dry, brushing beat, like grain poured from a sack. That night, Rome sleeps lightly. You lie on your bed under a wool blanket that still carries the faint smell of lanolin. The straw beneath the mattress rustles when you turn. Marcus sleeps on the other side of the room tonight, because he thinks this is respectful. You do not tell him that his snoring is not respectful at all. Morning comes with smoke, dew, and more news. The Sabines are nearer now. Titus Tatius has camped by a grove, sacrificed meatly, and arranged his men in proper order. Of course he has. If he ever invades a city, he will invade it with excellent posture. Then comes stranger news, carried by a boy so eager he nearly trips on his own importance. A Roman girl has spoken with the Sabines. A gate might open. There is talk of a bargain. People gather in knots at corners and doorways. Voices stay low, because low voices make rumors feel official. The girl's name is Tarpeia. You hear she is young. You hear she is foolish. You hear she is clever. Usually when people say all three, trouble follows. Some say she met the Sabines near the spring below the hill. Some say she carried water jars. Some say she carried ambition. The details shift with each speaker. One point stays fixed. She has asked for what the Sabines wear on their arms. At first this sounds like a child's riddle. Then everyone begins explaining it with great seriousness. On Roman arms are bracelets, some say. On noble arms are rings and gold bands, say others. On Sabine arms, you know, there are also shields. You stand very still when you understand this. Marcus looks at you as if he hopes your face will interpret history before it arrives. You ask who told her this was a good idea. He says no one has admitted it yet. That afternoon, the gate that should remain shut does not remain shut. You do not see the bargain made. You see only its result. Men move too quickly in the lane. Dust scuffs up from their sandals. A cry passes from one end of the wall to the other. You climb the short rise by the houses with other women. From there, you can glimpse the gate and the crush of moving shields beyond it. Bright bronze catches the sun in hard flashes. Tarpeia is there near the opening, and for one heartbeat she looks almost pleased. Then the Sabines give her exactly what she asked for. They wear shields on their arms, broad and heavy and round. They cast them down in a glittering heap. The bargain is fulfilled with the sort of grim cleverness men admire in stories and distrust in daily life. Nobody needs to explain the lesson. Everyone understands it at once. You look away before the crowd settles. Some things do not grow gentler from staring. The lane behind you still holds ordinary details, which feels almost rude. A dog noses a broken fig. Someone has dropped a sandal strap and not returned for it. A child asks for water because children always do. Rome absorbs shock, the way new clay takes a thumbprint, deeply and all at once. By evening, every cooking fire carries the story. People tell it while slicing onions. They tell it while washing cups. They tell it with horror, relish, and a little awe. Tarpeia wanted what the Sabines wore on their arms, they say. Yes, someone answers, and the Sabines gave it. The line passes from mouth to mouth with the steady rhythm of a proverb being born. You wish very much that history liked quieter sayings. Hercilia gathers the women before supper. You stand in a half circle beside jars, baskets, and a pile of wool waiting to be spun. Some women hold babies, some hold themselves tightly. Hercilia does not waste words. She says fear spreads quickly in a city this small, so calm must spread faster. She tells you to keep water stored, bread baked, and children close. She tells you to listen more than you speak. Then she asks who has extra barley and who can share oil. In this way, she turns worry back into tasks. It works better than speeches. You go home carrying a small loaf still warm from another woman's hearth. Its crust is thick and dusty with flour. The middle is soft enough to steam in your hands when you break it. Marcus has found dried figs somewhere. He presents them with such caution that you almost thank him before remembering the larger situation. At supper, he tries not to ask how afraid you are. You try not to ask whether his king has any sensible plans. Instead, you discuss the beans in your garden. This is not foolish. It is one of the only useful things anybody says all day. After the bowls are scraped clean, you mend a tear in your hem. The wool catches slightly where the weave has frayed. You lick the thread end, push it through the needle eye, and begin. Marcus watches your hands, then offers to hold the lamp closer. This is also improvement. Early Marcus would have tried sewing and then apologized to the cloth. As the days press forward, your life inside Rome keeps deepening in spite of itself. You know which baker burns the bottom crust. You know which lane floods after rain. You know which well gives sweeter water. You know the hour when the wall workers break for bread and lean against fresh stone in a row. They leave handprints in the dust and laugh with their mouths full. Their laughter sounds very young for city founders. You have started trading herb cuttings with a neighbor whose name you first learned wrong. She corrected you 3 times. Now you say it properly, and she gives you leeks in spring. This is how belonging sneaks up on you. It enters with onions and corrected names. In the morning you grind barley on the corn with steady practice turns. The stone is cool at first and warm beneath your palms. Fine meal gathers in a pale ring around the edge. The motion settles your thoughts into a slower shape. Outside, sandals pass more often now. Messengers move between gate and square. The city keeps listening northward. Sometimes the wind brings only meadow smell from the Sabine terraces. Sometimes it brings the dust of many feet. The dust arrives before the men do. It rises over the road in a broad pale column, and hangs there long after each shift of movement. From the higher ground you can see sunlight flashing from shield rims like quick fish in a river. The sound comes later, as if everyone hears with their shoulders. Then the marching reaches you in soft, repeated beats. It is not dramatic from this distance. It sounds like work. A long file of sandals on dry earth makes a patient scraping rhythm. You have heard laundresses beat cloth harder. Still, your chest tightens when you count the beats. Word passes that Titus Tacius himself is near the front. Naturally, he is near the front. A king who dresses that carefully does not trail behind his own ceremony. They say his shield is polished like still water. They say the metal boss at its center catches the whole afternoon sun. They say his cloak clasp gleams. They say even his horse looks solemn. You picture him pausing before the line, lifting a hand, and speaking one more excellent speech. Perhaps he names the hills. Perhaps he names the fathers. Perhaps he names the shame and duty and all the old heavy words. The men will nod. The shields will shift. Somebody will clear his throat at the wrong moment and pretend it was planned. Then they will walk on. In Rome, people begin storing grain higher off the floor. They tie goats closer to doorposts. They draw water before dusk. They carry bedding where it can be lifted quickly. Even fear produces chores. You wash your tunic in a basin and beat it against a flat stone. The fabric darkens with water and grows heavy in your hands. Soap leaves made from ash and fat smell plain and clean. You wring the cloth, spread it on a line, and watch the breeze tug it straight. Nothing about this task knows an army is coming. You find that oddly comforting. Marcus returns with 2 better bowls from market because he claims your cracked one worries him. He has also remembered onions without being asked. This is nearly suspicious competence. You ask if he is feeling well. He says adversity has improved his memory. You tell him not to become too proud of basic household function. He accepts this with admirable humility. That evening, he tries a phrase in your own tongue. The sounds come out crooked and gentle. He means to say the fire is low. He accidentally says the goat is thoughtful. You laugh then, really laugh, and the room loosens around both of you. He laughs too, relieved to have failed usefully. In the next house, a baby fusses until someone hums. Further down the lane, a woman shakes a rug and sends a cloud of dust into sunset light. A man coughs, then complains about the rug with great dignity. Rome is learning domestic rhythm one doorway at a time. Yet beyond the walls, formal things continue. Titus Tatius brings his army forward by stages, as if each hill deserves its own announcement. Standards lift, horns sound, sandals brush the road. The Sabines do not rush. They arrive with the grave patience of people who intend to be remembered correctly. A messenger says they camp neatly, with shields stacked, and cooking fires spaced in rows. Even in anger, your people prefer order. Soup still needs a place to simmer. You wonder which women stir those pots tonight. Perhaps your aunt adds beans with the same wooden spoon she always uses. Perhaps your cousin tears bread and listens for commands beyond the tents. Perhaps Fulvia sits near the fire and counts another mark for being right. She will not gloat modestly. That has never been her way. If she ever writes a memoir, it will be mostly a list of disasters she identified before breakfast. You miss her terribly. You miss the smell of juniper smoke from the hill houses. You miss the thin bells on grazing goats. You miss knowing every path by the shape of stones. Then you look at your doorway and the beams climbing a bit higher. You look at the shelf where your cup stands near Marcus's cup. You look at the mended hem on your tunic. The life here is still awkward, but it is undeniably a life. That is the quiet difficulty underneath everything. If Rome remained only smoke and theft and noise, hatred would be simpler. But now your hands know this hearth and this garden. Your ears know this lane at dawn. Your mouth knows which market woman cheats on weights and which one rounds kindly upward. You have begun to belong in the very place you did not choose. Outside, the night carries another faint marching sound. It drifts across the valley with the smell of dry grass and campfire ash. It is steady enough to count and soft enough to doubt. You sit in the doorway with your knees drawn up and listen. Marcus sits a little way off because he has learned that not all company needs speech. The moon lifts pale over the unfinished wall. Fresh stone keeps the day's warmth longer than earth. The timber scaffolds smell resinous and sweet in the cool air. Somewhere nearby, a worker has left a hammer on a plank. It gives a small, lonely clink when the night breeze nudges it. You think of Tarpeia then. You think of the gate, the glint of bronze, and the foolish little space where greed imagines itself clever. What people wear on their arms can mean many things: gold, bracelets, rank, burden, a shield heavy enough to end a bargain forever. History likes these tidy turns. Real life usually does not. Real life is lentils simmering while soldiers march. It is laundry drying beside a city wall. It is learning two names for the same herb. Hercilia says women often live in the gap between what men declare and what mornings still require. You understand her better now. Soon, the fathers and brothers and husbands from your hills will stand near enough to see faces. Soon, the Romans will stand on new walls that still smell of cut wood and wet clay. Soon each side will call itself right in a clear, strong voice. And you will still need to draw water at first light. You will still need to pull weeds from the beans before they choke the stalks. You will still need to decide how much salt belongs in the lentils. These facts feel almost absurd. They also feel more solid than speeches. Far to the north, the dust column settles, then rises again. The sandals keep coming. The shields keep catching light. The valley holds the sound and sends it back softly. You sit very still between two homes and listen until the stars sharpen overhead. Then you go inside, set the bowls in order, and bank the fire for morning. The valley smells of warm dust and fresh-cut timber before the sun clears Rome's rough new wall. You stand just inside the gate, and the smell of Tiber clay clings to every stone near your feet. Below you, the Sabine men gather across the valley floor in neat dark bands. Above them, on the hill, the Romans hold their line among half-built streets and piles of pale rubble. Nothing in Rome ever seems fully finished. A wall rises shoulder-high in one place and only knee-high in the next, with hammers resting beside it like sleeping tools. The men on the wall do not speak much. You hear leather straps creak, bronze rings tap against spear shafts, and someone clear his throat 3 times. The sound of a mule carries oddly in the morning air. A cart still waits near the gate, with baskets of lime, 2 mattocks, and a jar of water wrapped in wet cloth. You almost laugh at the normal look of it. Even on the morning when 2 peoples face each other, Rome still looks like a work site, with ideas above its station. Romulus stands where everyone can see him. He plants his feet, as if the ground beneath him exists mostly to support his latest civic innovation. From where you stand, he looks calm. He always looks calm when his plans become other people's lifelong complications. If Rome ever had a founding pitch deck, you think, it would promise location, walls, and robust grain prospects. Then it would arrive at the final tablet and whisper about one critical gap in the user base. Marcus stands a little behind the Roman line. You know him at once by the way he keeps shifting his grip on his shield, then remembering to stop. He catches sight of you near the gate and looks pained in a familiar way. He has spent months apologizing for the festival, the capture, the whole city, and likely the weather. Today his face suggests he would also like to apologize for the valley. Down below, the Sabine line holds still in the clean morning light. You know those cloaks, those hill shoes, those striped hems, and the shape of those broad country shields. You know the smell that drifts up from them too. It is sheep wool, oiled wood, hard cheese, and the dry herb scent of the terraced hills after sun. The green fields behind them rise in calm steps toward home. You can almost trace the path that leads past your old spring, the fig tree, and the threshing ground. Your chest feels full in a slow, uncomfortable way. You belong to the hill above and the hill across from it. King Titus Tatius sits his horse a little apart from the first rank. He is very straight in the back, very clean in his cloak, and slightly too formal for a dusty valley. You are not surprised. He has the look of a man who prepared for a proper answer and found that Rome has once again moved ahead with nonsense. The morning stretches. No one seems able to begin the thing they all came for. A breeze stirs the wool at your wrists and carries the stale smoke of last night's fires down the street behind you. From deeper inside Rome, you hear a child cry for breakfast. That sound lands harder than any shout. Around you, the women of Rome gather in doorways, under lintels, beside jars, and near the unfinished gate tower. Some are Sabine like you. Some are Latin. Some were born in places you still cannot place on a hill map. All of you have learned the odd rhythm of this city. You know when the masons start, when the goats wander loose, and when Romulus is about to call trouble necessity. You also know the smell of morning porridge in Marcus's house. He likes too much barley in it, and he stirs until it turns thick as wet plaster. Today the hearth smoke hangs low. No one has eaten enough. A little boy near the gate keeps dropping a wooden wheel and picking it up again. His mother lifts him to her hip and does not take her eyes off the valley. A baby sleeps against another woman's shoulder, with milk dried in a pale crescent on her tunic. The ordinary things make the waiting stranger. The city still smells of baking bread, damp wool, and clay floors freshly swept with twig brooms. Then Hercilia comes through the street, with the quiet pace of someone carrying water without spilling a drop. She does not rush. She does not call out. Still, women begin to move toward her from every side lane and courtyard. You see one leave dough covered under a cloth. You see another set down a spindle with the wool still looped around her wrist. You see an old woman hook her door with a strip of leather and join the others without a word. Hercilia reaches you and touches your arm. Her hand is warm, dry, and steady. You look into her face and find no panic there at all. That may be the strangest sight in Rome. Around her, everything becomes simple, in the way only difficult things sometimes do. Hercilia nods. Another asks whether to bring the children. Hercilia nods again. No speech begins the choice. No one votes. No one uses fine words. You all understand at once that standing indoors while fathers and husbands face each other outside has become impossible. The understanding moves through you like a breath passed from mouth to mouth. A young woman beside you wipes her hands on her apron and laughs once in disbelief. Then she pulls loose the pin at the back of her hair. Another follows her. Then you do the same. Your hair falls down your back in a heavy dark line, and the morning air touches your neck. It is an old sign. It says grief before grief arrives. It says you come unhidden and unarmed. It says men should notice something other than their own plans. One woman cannot free her pin with one hand because her baby sleeps on the other arm. You step close and help her. The pin is plain bone, smooth from use and warm from her skin. She thanks you with only her eyes. A little girl asks why everyone is taking down their hair. Her mother tells her, because today we need every sign the old world gave us. The child thinks about that and says it sounds inconvenient. You almost smile. Old grandmother Fulvia would deeply approve of that answer. In your mind, you hear her voice, counting another mark on her endless tally of being right. The moment Rome's first smoke appeared over the ridge, she predicted tears, dust, and administrative confusion. You have to admit that her record remains annoyingly strong. Hercilia turns to the gate and waits until enough women stand beside her. You count more than you expected. There are neighbors from your lane, women from the well, women who barter onions, women who still mix up Roman names. There are women with infants, women with toddlers, and women with no children yet who stand just as firm. Someone passes around cups of water from a skin. The leather tastes faintly of goat. You swallow and hand it on. A woman straightens the hem of another woman's dress, as if for a feast. Someone else wipes a child's nose with the corner of her shawl. The habits of care do not pause for history. Marcus edges closer to you from the Roman side. He keeps his voice low, as if loudness itself might be rude. He says he is sorry that the day has taken this turn. You look at him for a moment. Then you tell him the day took this turn months ago. He nods like a man receiving a lesson he deserved. He offers you his water flask anyway. It is very like him. If apologies could pave streets, Rome would already have excellent roads. Hercilia glances once toward Romulus. You follow her gaze. He is watching the women gather with the expression of a man who did not include this possibility in his very confident planning. This is also very like him. He invented a kind of shotgun wedding, you think, but skipped several steps future lawyers would insist were not optional. No trumpet sounds for you. No herald names you. The gate simply opens wider, and the bright dust beyond it waits. For a breath, no one moves. You hear sandals scuff stone. You hear a swallow under the gate arch. Then Hercilia steps forward, and all of you go with her. The sun has risen enough to warm the top of your head. Dust lifts around your ankles at once. The ground outside the gate is packed hard where carts have passed, then loose and stony where the road breaks into the valley. You hold the hand of the little girl walking beside you until her mother takes it back. A baby wakes and makes one small offended noise. Someone behind you begins to hum under her breath. Not a song, only a steady note for courage. The hair on your back catches at your dress ties. Your loose braid marks the place between order and mourning. Women adjust children on their hips. A toddler insists on carrying his own little cup, though it keeps tipping. One woman has come out wearing one house shoe and one outdoor sandal. No one comments on it. You all have larger matters in hand. The Romans nearest the gate part without being told. Their shields tilt aside. Their spear points lift just enough to make room for your bodies. You feel their eyes on you, and not one of them meets your face for long. Marcus steps back so quickly, he nearly treads on a basket of stones. He catches himself, looks ashamed, and then more ashamed for looking ashamed. You would comfort him if the valley were not full of armed relatives. Instead, you keep walking. The descent from Rome's hill is not graceful. You know every rut by now. There is the patch where last week's rain cut a thin channel through the clay. There is the flat stone that always rocks under your heel. There is the thorny scrub at the edge where wool sometimes snags. Today your hem catches there, and you free it with one firm tug. Ahead, the open space between the two lines looks larger than it ever does from a wall. Dust lies over it in a fine pale sheet. A few early flies drift above the ground where pack animals stood before dawn. The air holds the smell of wool, hide, and warm metal. You hear children first. That is the strange part. A baby fusses for milk. A little boy asks whether his grandfather is in the men below. His mother tells him yes and shifts him higher against her shoulder. The valley hears that answer. You keep walking. Hair loose, arms full, sandals dusty, you cross the space where men plan to prove a point. It turns out the ground under such plans feels exactly like ordinary ground. The Sabine line stirs before the Roman one does. You see heads turn. You see one spear angle down in surprise. You see an older man lean forward with his mouth half open, trying to place faces. The Romans hold their breath behind you. The Sabines forget to move in front of you. For a few steps, all sound seems made of cloth. Wool shifts at shoulders, tunics brush knees, a baby's beads click softly against his mother's necklace. Hercilia walks at the front without hurrying. One hand supports the child on her hip, the other hangs open at her side, palm empty and plain to see. You think that if Calm had a body, it might borrow hers for the morning. You come near enough now to see details in the Sabine ranks. A man's belt has been mended with 2 kinds of leather. Another still has chaff on his cloak from a stable floor. One carries your village pattern at his cuff. Another has your uncle's way of standing, feet slightly apart, shoulders set for a climb. Your throat tightens around names you do not say. The child beside you starts waving at someone in the Sabine line. A hand lifts in answer before its owner remembers where he stands. That tiny half-wave undoes something in the whole valley. You see it pass through the ranks like wind through barley. Fathers recognize daughters. Brothers recognize sisters. Men who came to face enemies discover familiar hems, familiar bracelets, familiar children with their own eyes. This is not ideal military order. It is, however, excellent truth. Somewhere behind you, a Roman coughs. Somewhere ahead, a Sabine horse stamps once and then settles. No one gives an order. No one seems willing to be the first man rude enough to interrupt women carrying babies. You stop in the open ground where both sides can hear. Dust rests on your toes and on the fine hair of your forearms. The sun warms the crown of your head. Your heart beats hard but steady. Like pounding grain in a mortar, around you, the women spread in a rough line. Not perfect, not planned, very human. One bounces a child against her shoulder. Another wipes her eyes with the back of her wrist. A third stands with both hands on a round belly and breathes as if climbing. Hercilia turns first toward the Sabines, then she turns toward the Romans. You turn with her because that is what everyone does now. She looks at fathers, husbands, brothers, and kings, as if they are simply men who must hear sense before breakfast grows cold. Her voice carries farther than you expect. It is not loud, it is clear. You hear every word, because the whole valley suddenly behaves like a room. She says you stand between 2 homes and can no longer divide your bodies to satisfy either. She says, the men below gave you life. She says the men above share your beds, your bread, and the roofs over your sleeping children. She says each side calls you theirs, and neither claim feels complete by itself. Standing there, you feel the truth of that in your bones. You are a daughter still. You are also a wife, though the word came to you by a path you never would have chosen. You are both against your will and by your habit. You know the shape of Marcus's hand reaching for the water jug in the dark. You know the smell of your father's sheep pens after rain. There is no tidy shelf in the heart for such things. Hercilia says if the Sabines strike Rome, they strike daughters and grandsons. She says if the Romans strike Sabines, they strike fathers, brothers, and the old names of your houses. She does not speak like a judge. She speaks like a woman sorting thread from a tangled basket and refusing to throw any of it away. A child in her arms pats her collarbone while she talks. That touch makes the whole point stronger than any grand phrase could. These children, she says, are the knot now tying hill to hill. You look around at the small faces pressed against wool and linen. One child has a Roman father's nose and a Sabine grandmother's sharp black eyes. Another sucks 2 fingers and stares at the bright spearheads with sleepy indifference. The future, you think, often appears with a damp cheek and one lost sandal. Hercilia says you women have already paid enough for men's bold inventions. You do not look at Romulus then, though many of you probably want to. He has always had a talent for treating catastrophe as a promising new civic model. The Consualia, you think, remains history's worst reviewed Eventbrite listing. The event description was misleading. The exit plan was especially poor. A few Romans shift where they stand, a few Sabines lower their eyes. No one argues with Hercilia. That is one of her rare gifts. She never raises her voice, yet every room seems to move its chairs toward her. She says if either side wins by force, you women lose twice. You lose your birth homes or your built homes. You lose fathers or husbands. You lose one half of your children wherever they stand. The words settle over the valley like a cloth spread carefully over bread. Nothing about them is sharp. Everything about them is impossible to escape. You glance toward King Titus Tatius. His face has gone very still. He looks less like a king ready for a charge, and more like a grandfather hearing difficult sense from a granddaughter. His cloak remains immaculate, which somehow makes the moment even more Sabine. You glance up toward Romulus. He is not smiling now. He looks as if a thing he founded in confidence has become real in a way he cannot command. That happens to founders. They start a city for men and walls, and discover it contains women with memories. Hercilia says you women do not ask either side to forget what was done. At that, a murmur runs through the line beside you. She lets it pass. Then she says memory is heavy enough without laying widowed futures on top of it. You are grateful for the plainness of that. No one needs ornate sorrow. You need only enough truth to stop the valley from breaking in two. Beside you, the woman with the mismatched shoes shifts her sleeping son and squares her shoulders. Her loose hair sticks to the tears on her cheeks. Another woman reaches across and squeezes her hand once. Tiny gestures keep the world from tipping. Hercilia says if blame must rest somewhere, let it rest on the women already carrying the whole matter in their bodies. That line hurts. It hurts because you know the old custom inside it. It hurts because you know she offers herself first. Yet she says it not as surrender, but as a mirror held up to men. If you claim us, she means, then look at what your claims now contain. Your stomach twists in a slow, hard knot. You think of your mother's loom in the hill house. You think of Marcus trying to repair a cracked bowl and making it worse, then buying you a better one. You think of how life refuses to stay in one camp once it has shared enough meals. A breeze passes through the valley at last. It lifts the loose ends of your hair. It stirs the horse tails and the feathered shaft wrappings and the cloth on children's backs. Dust moves in a thin, low veil around your ankles. Then the silence deepens. It deepens because no one can pretend not to understand. You hear the first spear butt settle against the ground on the Sabine side. The sound is small. It lands like a stone dropped in still water. Another follows from the Roman side, then a third. You do not see who moves first. You only feel the whole line loosen by degrees. Shoulders drop, hands unclench, bronze points tilt away from chests and toward the harmless dirk. The valley does not cheer. That would be too sudden for the hour. Instead, a long-held breath leaves many bodies at once. It sounds almost like wind entering reeds. A baby begins to cry now that danger has become quiet enough to notice. His mother sits right there in the dust to feed him. No one tells her not to. For one tender moment, all the grand shapes of war and kingship stand still before an ordinary meal. You realize your own knees are shaking. Only now, when the spear points lower, does your body remember fear. You put a hand against your skirt to steady it. The cloth is warm from sun and rough with valley dust. Marcus takes one step forward and then stops. He seems unsure whether this is the moment for speaking or for continuing to exist very respectfully. You almost want to laugh. If there is ever a statue of him, it should show him half apologizing with a water flask. Across from him, several Sabine men look at the women as if seeing a season change while still in the same field. One of them takes off his helmet. Another rubs his face with both hands. A third simply stares at the child who has his brother's ears. King Titus Tatius dismounts at last. Even that he does with grave care, as though ceremony may still rescue dignity from events. His horse tosses its head and seems frankly less invested in protocol. Romulus comes down a few paces from the Roman line. For once, he does not stride like a man unveiling a grand solution. He walks like someone entering a house where others have already set the terms. You do not dislike him in this moment. You simply find him more human than usual. That is almost the same as smaller. The women do not move away. That part matters. You stand where you are with your dust, your loose hair, your children, your torn loyalties, and your sore feet. You make the men come into the world you have been living in all along. It is a cramped world. It is a shared world. It smells of milk, smoke, lime plaster, and wool drying by a hearth. No king can ignore that forever. Around you, tiny practical things resume first. A child asks for water. A woman finds a strip of bread in her sleeve and gives it over. Someone reties a sandal thong. Someone else lifts a sleeping toddler away from the sun. Peace, you notice, arrives looking very domestic. It never enters with polished words alone. It comes with feeding, shading, adjusting, and making room on the ground. The lines of men begin to blur. Not entirely, not yet, but enough for faces to matter more than ranks. You see a Sabine father move close enough to touch his daughter's hair and stop just short. You see a Roman husband lower his eyes before his wife's brother. You see shame and relief sharing the same mouth. Then there is another silence. This one is not the hard silence from before. This one feels suspended, open, waiting to learn its new shape. A lark rises somewhere over the grass and keeps singing, as if valleys always sort themselves out this way. You wish Grandmother Fulvia could hear that bird. She would say even the lark sounds smug. Then she would add 2 more marks to her tally and ask whether Rome plans any future festivals she should avoid. You breathe in dust, wool, warm child skin, and the damp river smell drifting up from below. You breathe out slowly. The world in front of you is not healed. It is simply paused in the right place. That is enough for now. Hercilia stands with the child on her hip and looks from one side to the other. No one has crowned her anything. No one has voted. Still, the whole valley has just taken instruction from her hands, her voice, and her refusal to step aside. You know then that whatever Rome becomes, women like her will carry its hidden beams. The hammers on the unfinished walls are silent behind you. The terraced Sabine fields lie green beyond the men below. Between those 2 landscapes you stand with the others in the open space that did not exist until you walked into it. It is only dust and light and flattened grass. It is also a new kind of ground. You do not know yet what the kings will call this day. You do not know how the story will be cleaned, polished, and told by men who prefer founders to housewives. You only know what your seats feel. They feel the same earth under both peoples. Another spear lowers, then another. Hands open, helmets come off. A few men begin to weep in the embarrassed, quiet way of men who would rather call it dust. You let them have that small dignity. The morning has room for many kinds of truth. You look once toward home in the hills, then you look once toward Rome's raw, bright walls. For the first time since the festival, the 2 views do not seem to pull you cleanly apart. They simply stand there, waiting to be joined by the difficult, patient work that follows any grand mistake. That work will be long. It will involve bread, babies, names, fields, roofs, and endless explanations. It will almost certainly involve Romulus announcing a partnership arrangement, as if he invented compromise itself. Still, the spears are down. The valley holds. You stand in the stillness with dust on your hem and sunlight in your loose hair. Around you, fathers and husbands lower their hands and do not lift them again. For one suspended moment, before anyone finds the right formal words, the whole world becomes quiet enough to change. You linger for a moment with the odd dignity of peace, because tonight it arrives wearing 2 crowns and 1 shared problem. You see Romulus standing very straight, with fresh-cut timber behind him and the half-built walls catching late light. You see Titus Tatius beside him, just as formal as ever, and just slightly too dressed for a city that still smells of wet clay. You watch them agree to rule together, and the whole thing feels both grand and deeply practical. Rome needs peace. The Sabines need peace. You need everyone to stop making history at you for one quiet afternoon. So the treaty settles over the valley, like a clean cloth over warm bread. 2 peoples become 1 people. 2 kings become 1 arrangement. It is not neat, but very little in Rome is neat yet. Even so, you feel the ground grow calmer under your sandals. The clank of hammers on stone keeps going. The river keeps moving past its banks. The goats still want feeding. History, for all its noise, must fit around supper. You hold on to that small comfort. Then you look again at the road into Rome, because that is where the next strange wonder begins. The Sabines come down from the green terraces with carts, baskets, children, old gods, new doubts, and enough household goods to shame a caravan. You remember the creak of wheels over ruts. You remember the dust rising in little clouds around ankles and cart poles. You remember bundles of wool, jars of grain, hanging herbs, stools with 1 stubborn short leg, and blankets that smell faintly of smoke and sheep. You remember how the city seems to inhale and then double in one season. New faces appear in the market. New words move through the streets. Old Roman shouting meets steady Sabine muttering, and somehow both survive. You hear one woman ask for salt in one tongue and receive it in another. You watch a child answer in a third way that belongs to both. You notice how customs do not arrive like soldiers. They arrive like kitchen steam. They drift through doorways and stay. A Sabine pot hangs over a Roman fire. A Roman jug sits on a Sabine shelf. New prayers are added without much fuss. One god makes room for another, which is more grace than many humans manage. The food changes first, because food always wins these arguments with almost unfair speed. You taste stews thick with grain and greens. You smell onions softening in oil. You see loaves shaped a little differently than before. You find that someone has added herbs from the hills to a city pot, and now everybody acts as if this had always been sensible. Rome becomes louder, fuller, and better fed. It also becomes much more crowded. The lanes feel busier. The dusty street near your door never truly settles. There is always another pair of feet, another basket, another opinion, and another small civic innovation from Romulus, who still presents every questionable choice as if he is unveiling a brilliant new feature. His founding pitch deck remains very confident. Excellent location, strong walls, good farms, one critical gap in the user base, female users. We are pivoting to acquisition. You have had time to reflect on that strategy, and your review has not improved. The Consualia remains history's worst reviewed Eventbrite listing. 0 stars still feels generous. Yet now the city he cobbles together with bold claims and poor follow-through begins to soften around the edges. It grows into a place where people wake, sweep, cook, mend, trade, gossip, and put children to bed. That is how a city becomes real. Not through speeches, through laundry. You feel that truth most clearly when your own life stops lurching and begins little by little to settle. You see your garden in the shared yard. You know each bed by touch now. You know where the beans climb. You know where the onions sit tight in the soil. You know which patch holds the best damp in the morning. There is a jug near the door with a chip on the rim. There is a stool that no one repairs because everyone knows how to sit on it safely. There are children who no longer fit the word child very well. They move through the house with quick, sure hands. They know both hill paths and city lanes. They carry Sabine words and Roman ones in the same mouth with no sign of strain. They eat what is set before them, and then ask for more bread, as if this whole strange founding myth exists mainly to support their appetite. It is hard not to respect that. Marcus still hovers near the edges of your days with the look of a man who wakes each morning, determined to apologize more effectively than yesterday. He tries offerings of fruit. He tries repairs to useful things. He tries being helpful with jars, which rarely ends in a way that helps the jars. He has spent so long apologizing for the entire situation that apology has become one of his main skills. It is almost touching. It is sometimes even useful. Almost. And through all of it, Hercilia remains the calm center of every room. She moves through quarrels, chores, births, bargains, and awkward ceremonies, with the face of a woman who expected nonsense and laid out fresh linen for it in advance. You follow her lead because everyone does. No one fully admits this. No one needs to. Then there is Grandmother Fulvia, who at last comes down from the Sabine hills with all her furniture and all her opinions, which together take up remarkable space. You remember the day her things arrive. It is one of the clearest pictures of all. A chest appears first, then a stool, then blankets, then jars, then another chest, because naturally there is another chest, then the bedding, then the cooking pot she trusts and refuses to replace, then a little table that serves no clear purpose, except proving she was wise to bring it, then more boxes than seem reasonable for one elderly woman who claims she was packing light. She steps into Rome with the look of someone inspecting a long-predicted accident. She glances at the walls, she glances at the lanes, she glances at Romulus's latest civic improvisation. Then she gives you that small, tight nod, which means her running public tally of proven rights has gained another mark. She is never not right. The city itself seems to understand this. Even the dust gives way respectfully around her hems. Once she settles, The house changes again. Her woven cloth hangs by the bed. Her bowl sits by the hearth. Her old sounds join the house, including the throat clear that means judgment is on the way. Yet her presence makes the rooms feel fuller in the best sense. Rome does not erase the Sabine hills. It lets them arrive one cart at a time. That may be the kindest surprise in the whole tale. By the time evening reaches the Palatine, you can feel the merged city breathing with one broad chest. Smoke rises from many fires. Then the cooking ends. Bowls are scraped clean. Doors are pulled in. Voices fall lower. A last cart rattles over the road and at last stops. The smell of timber still hangs in the night, but now it mixes with bread, wool, ashes, and the sweet damp from the river. You look across the slope and see torches dim one by one. One goes dark near the wall. One fades by a doorway. One winks out above a lane where children finally stop whispering. Another lingers stubbornly, as if some household has one more story to tell. Then that light goes too. The city rests. The new people rest inside it. Rome is not the place that took you. It is not the village you knew. It is a third thing, awkward and crowded and real. And tonight it finally grows quiet enough for you to hear your own breath inside it. The warmth of the day eases out of the stones, and the night feels heavy in the kindest way. The story settles around you like folded wool, with room at last for stillness. Grandmother Fulvia ends the evening exactly where she always means to be, seated among all her rescued furniture, and silently enjoying the comfort of being right in a larger city than before. May your dreams be free of Roman festival invitations with suspiciously vague guest lists. May no neighbor ever mistake your polite RSVP for a binding legal commitment. May your city's demographic problems always be solved by something significantly more diplomatic than a harvest festival. Thank you for listening. May your thoughts rest easy, and good night.